Welcome back, everyone. Today I've got a very special video. For some time now, I've wanted to try to interview flat earthers. I've sent out multiple requests, and so far, nobody's taken me up on the offer. Well, that is until I messaged Mark Sargent. And within 4 hours, him and I were on a Skype call, having a very pleasant conversation. This is not meant to be a debate. It is not meant to question his beliefs. This was so that we could understand his history and where he's coming from. And I have to say that despite me being a virtual nobody online, he accepted my offer, and I spent a good 2.5 hours chatting with Mr. Sargent. This is a fairly long video. A shorter version with just highlights will be released at a future date, but for right now, this is the video in its entirety. We did have a few issues recording video and audio, but in the end, we made it work pretty well. Hopefully this interview will be an enlightening endeavor into the mind of one of the first flat earthers. Thank you, Mr. Sargent, for giving me your time.
Are there, like I said in my message, again, thank you very much for even entertaining this. I'm starting my little YouTube channel. I'm just under 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully in a week or so I'll hit it.
Cool.
Yeah. Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Sure.
Are there, and like I said in my message, are there any areas that you don't want to talk about? Anything that's off limits? Anything too personal?
Nope. Everything's on the record.
Okay.
No worries. In fact, well, because I just finished my second book. It just went off to publisher not even a week ago, and I covered just about every topic I could think of, including friends of Flat Earth that are kind of outside the community, enemies of the state, people that I don't think should be anywhere near us. So if whatever angle you want to cover, I'll touch on it.
Okay. And honestly, the whole purpose of this is just to help people in my community understand who you are, where your thought processes come from, and everything of that nature. My Skype just locked up.
Did it?
Oh,
you look.
Yeah, everything froze. Everything froze for a second. Okay. So if you would, quick introduction for who you are.
My name is Mark Sargent. I live in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a flat earther.
Okay. So if you would, tell me a little bit about how you grew up. Where did you grow up at? Family size, dynamics of that nature?
I grew up on a rural island in the northwest of the United States called Whidbey. If anyone knows the area at all, it is just south of the San Juan Islands, Canada, otherwise known as Canada. It is right up. I mean, literally, you can see it just just drive up the island here a few miles, and it's right there across the water. Small family. I had one sister. Mom and dad raised in a fairly strong born-again Christian family. But it's a rural island, right, up in the northwest. So I was super sheltered and very, very naive, and didn't even believe that people lied at all. So that's where I grew up. But literally until I was 21 and saw JFK in the theater back in 1991, long before the internet. Well, at least the internet we know now. I didn't even think people in authority lied ever. Why would they? Everything on the news was true. Why would anyone lie? It didn't. Now, of course, I know better. But yeah, that's where I grew
up. You said you're fundamentalist type Christian family, or born again.
Church just wasn't just a Sunday thing. It was back in the 80s, 70s and 80s where I grew up. It was kind of cool. We had good people that were running the church and the youth group. So there was church, there was youth group, the Vacation Bible School. Went to Camp Malibu up in British Columbia. Until I went to university, I didn't even know there was more than one religion. I literally was like, I'd heard of it, but it's like whatever. I had no idea that there was Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam. Didn't even know those other four teams existed. It was like just one team. The other people were just what. There was a line from The Simpsons: "The Christian or miscellaneous." And Apu goes, "Hindu. There are 700 million of us," and well, now I think they're like 1 billion. So yeah, but yes, yeah.
How strict was your growing up? being in a Christian church? Because I know
strict. It's strict because when you grow up in a rural island, it takes a lot to even, unless you're throwing rocks at cop cars, it is tough to get into trouble here. I mean, you really have to make up your own sort of trouble, other than throwing rocks at cop cars because that's too easy. The rest of it is, I mean, we were kind of encouraged to go out and find our own path, and literally in some cases, like there's woods everywhere, and woods and water. It's just green and blue. Those are the colors in the Northwest, and so no, it was not restrictive really. Creative father, school teacher mother, and just encouraged to express ourselves as much as we could. Even within the line. We didn't burn things down. It's not like, give me a box of matches, road flare, gasoline cans.
Any restrictions on media or consumption of things of that nature? Because I know I've had friends that were in pretty strict families where they had to cover their eyes during kissing scenes until they were in their teens.
No. But that being said, you got to remember that there was not it was the Louis Anderson joke which he said, he goes, what am I supposed to, when parents would always tell the kids what hardships they had growing up, and Louis Anderson always said, because what am I going to tell the kids? Is like, I didn't have cable till I was 12. That was basically it, though. I mean, there wasn't that much television. I mean, you could literally, there was no internet. There was no movie theater. There was one tiny movie theater in the south end of the island. You had to take a ferry and go into town, quote unquote town, to go to the movies. And then you couldn't get into rated R movies.
Yeah,
it was tough to get into. So no, it wasn't that restrictive. It wasn't like a Disney household either, though. I knew, like, my grandparents tried to broaden me when I was 13, and they took me around the country in different parts of the world, and I got to, it's like rated R movies, sure, bring them in, who cares? And so, but that, and some of them did have a little bit of effect on me. I got to see the edginess of a little glimpses of the edginess of the world that was out there. But it wasn't until I got to university that I finally got the full force of it.
So if you would say that your upbringing was sheltered, it wasn't necessarily sheltered because of family. It was literally sheltered.
It was literally geography. I mean, yeah, geographically sheltered. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, if you have to take a ferry boat to get to civilization, then in fact, there was a girl that joked with me. She goes, do you have like doctors and dentists up there? On the island? I go, no, the blacksmith pulls teeth on the weekends. And like, no, of course we do, but generally you don't go to them. I mean, you go to them, maybe, they have their clientele, but yeah, we'd have to take a ferry to go to, because there's a shipbuilding company. I mean, the thing is, it's a weird place because you're in this rural environment, but you can see across the water everything. Right. Mm-hmm. It's everything's there, all the glistening lights, and you can see Seattle from right down here. You can see it down 30 miles downrange in the distance. But you just couldn't get there. When the ferry shut down at midnight, that was it. You were done. And so, by the way, that was also another thing. If you wanted to plan some little outing as kids, like go to a rock concert in Seattle or something, boy, you better make it back by the time. You can't stay around for the encore.
Yeah, you're stuck.
Because if you don't catch that last boat, you're there until 5 a.m. And then what do? Well, you hope to catch that. There was this dilemma I'd always hear from the older kids, which was, okay, do you just wait there and drink coffee and then catch the boat and hope to God you can sneak in before your parents get up? Or do you drive all the way up the island and catch a bridge up at the top of the island, 50 miles? It's basically an hour up and an hour down, 2 hours, right? You're not even going to get in until probably 2 or 3. And during that drive, you're in 4 different police jurisdictions. What you do? You don't think they're going to pull over a carload of kids at 1 a.m? Of course they are. That's what they do. So yeah. Anyway.
You said that you didn't get exposed to much until you left home and went to university. Where did you go to university?
The first university I went to was Washington State over in Pullman, and I was really young. I graduated early, and I couldn't even drink when I went over there. So, but if you join a fraternity, and I joined Beta House when I went there, it probably the worst mistake ever. I basically drank my way through my first year of college, and just had to.
It tends to happen.
Yeah, I threw all the. Well, I mean, I was 17. I threw all the grade, barely 17. threw all the grades away for my first year, and then went to Western up in Bellingham, and made it through my junior year before I was kicked out for manufacturing explosives on campus. Sounds a lot worse than it is.
Say, there's got to be a story there.
There's a huge story there. There's a screenplay for what happened up there. Not kidding. No, I made fireworks for the Native American reservations that frequent a lot of Washington State. There's a lot of Native American reservations here, and they do very, very well, and they sell fireworks, but they're not allowed to make black market fireworks. And I was good at chemistry, so I made fireworks for them, and hired a bunch of kids that worked at the university, and did it for a couple years, and then the ATF got involved, and
That's
it
just
was
being an entrepreneur right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, no. There's the naive part, which was I always did fireworks shows when I was growing up, and then I was starting to be good enough with chemistry. I was starting to make some of my own for the shows, and I made too many. So me again, naive, walking into this reservation, carrying grocery bags full of M80s and M100s and cherry bombs, and laying it down. I go, hey, can I trade these across for rockets? And the guy's looking at me. He's going. Goes, hell, I'll give you $5 a piece for each of these, and we're talking grocery bags full, full blown. And up until that point, God's my witness, I didn't even think of me as a for-profit operation. Didn't even think. It's like, wait a minute, you're gonna give me money for this? And it's like I get back to campus, I'm going, okay, here's the plan, right? And I drew up a prospectus, and I had investors, and we bought all this equipment and bought all this stuff, and we went way too far. And in the end, I was brought down by a girl who wanted. Here goes to show you, she didn't nail me for moral reasons. She nailed me because I wasn't going to. She couldn't work for me because my girlfriend didn't like her, and she was already planning on it. And she goes, no. She goes, you will hire me and pay me what I would expect. Because she knew how much she could make for the summer, and she goes, or I'm going to drop the dime on you. And you're just like, come on, that's just hyperbole. Nobody does that, right? That's just a saying. Nobody. It's not even a dime anymore, right? And it hasn't been a dime for a long time. So I ignored her, and she called the FBI immediately, and they ignored her. And so she called back like 2 weeks later. She goes, why is he still walking around campus? They're going, fine. And they told me this afterwards. Normally, they don't tell who.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say what her name was, but I knew full well once they described her. I was going, oh, it's Lori. Really? And here, I'll tell you a quick funny story. Afterwards, I won't give you the whole fireworks thing. It takes hours to tell. It's a great story. But after I got nailed, I felt depressed because I wasn't getting hauled off to jail. It's kind of like it is what you run into, where they take statements and they leave it up to the prosecuting attorney. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you're going to, but it was fireworks. It's usually a slap on the wrist. But I was really depressed, and so I go over to her house, for some consolement. And she's looking at me like I'm some sort of ghost. She's scared to death of me, right? Basically, she thinks she was. It didn't occur to me, right? I'm sitting there and I'm looking for some sort of comfort, and she's going, "You got to get out of here. You got to go." And I'm going, "Why are you kicking me out? What the hell?" It's like a little empathy here, a little sympathy. And she literally, like, physically, like, dragged me out and, like, put me on the front step and, like, shut the doors, like, looking. And I'm going, it didn't even occur to me, because I didn't know back then. We hadn't even gone through the legal process. I had no idea what the hell was wrong with her. And it turns out she was scared to death that either it would slip and I would find, that I would find
Mm-hmm.
out during one of her things. It's like, oh yeah, well, we're all of a sudden, the movie plots, like, it's like, wait a minute. You were there. It's like, it was you. You were the one that kitchen knives, and start stabbing. So
I turned in a
anyway.
guy that makes explosives.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I joke with some people when I tell them that story. It's like, yeah, flat Earth and bomb making. Don't make me upset.
So, what did you study at university?
Mostly business administration. Computer classes were almost non-existent back in the late 80s. So but I got into it fairly quickly. So most of the stuff I studied in university didn't carry over, like a lot of things nowadays. Literally, there was no there was no computer lab. There was a word processing lab. In fact, I was one of the only kids on campus who had his own computer at home, and it was like an Apple II GS, which was state of the art back then. So yeah, but no, I
And what
didn't.
was
I
your
didn't. I
email
didn't
address at the time? One of the
email.
original Hotmail? Yeah.
No, there was no email. There was nothing. There was barely even bulletin boards. The only online thing I ever knew people were playing, and they weren't even linked up, were like mud dungeons, multi-user dungeons that you could play in like a LAN room. A LAN setup was the best you could hope for back then. But
Yeah, I remember a little bit of that. I'm a little younger than you. Believe it or not, I'm not 12. I look that, but I'm actually
you
in my
look young.
40s. I am
Really?
41. Yeah.
Wow, good for you, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, you
So,
do not look it. That's awesome.
yeah, so I grew up at the beginning of the internet age where we had an IBM computer at home, but we had to dial in, and it was the only, so you couldn't use the phone for the hour that you're on the internet.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was IBM bulletin boards, and we had that for like 2 years until IBM let you pay for extra internet access to get to the World Wide Web. And it
Right.
was like a part of their online service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked for America Online back
Ah.
when they started. I was a forum consultant for America Online back when they were charging ridiculous amounts before anyone went to a flat rate per month. People are spending $300-400 a month on America Online. And then I worked for only tech companies when I was in Boulder, Colorado, and I remember wasting entire summers because one of the tech companies I had a T1, and we're one of the few companies in Boulder, Colorado that had a T1. I was like, yeah, T1. It's like we could do just about anything we wanted. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. As back up just a little bit, what were your aspirations as you grew up? What did you want to do?
That's just it. I had no real aspirations at all. As far as anything, people say, "Oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be an astronaut," and stuff like that. No, there was no aspiration. I thought maybe I wanted to join the military because it seemed like a logical extension of the whole explosives thing.
Mm.
But the ordinance that they were using really wasn't something. I mean, I would have gotten, thank God I didn't. If I would have gotten into ordnance, I would have gotten into so much trouble because I would have been sneaking stuff off. I would have been blowing stuff up all the time, which would have been horrible because I would have gotten in trouble. Then I thought maybe I'd follow in my grandfather's footsteps and do the whole CPA thing, but it's so dry. There's just not. I mean, he was one of the best CPAs in the country, and he had connections, but it just wasn't me. I mean, CPAs. I mean, it's hang out with some CPAs sometime. They are not the liveliest bunch in the world, and even when they drink. But no, after that, I really didn't have much of anything so it worked out for me because there was no long-term goals. So when I won the computer game tournament in '94, and the company that made the game in Boulder, Colorado wanted to hire me as a ringer, and I was working as a sous chef in a restaurant at a Greek restaurant. Sorry if that's a military helicopter. You hear that rumbling. I don't know why they have so many military helicopters this week. You hear that?
Yeah, you're right outside Fort Lewis.
No,
Sure.
we are not. No, there's a Navy base up at the top called Oak Harbor, but I don't know why. I mean, we've been getting regular helicopters over the last 2-3 days. I mean, just loud, and they're flying low too, which is weird. Anyway, sorry. So when they asked me to come out and work in Colorado to play video games for a living, there was my choice. So the restaurant people said, "Okay, we'd like you." That's like I had a choice to be either the manager of the restaurant by the next year. They said, "Okay, look, if you stay, we'll make you manager," because they liked me. Or do I play video games out in Boulder, Colorado, which I'd never been? And it's like people would have killed me if I didn't take the chance.
Yeah,
And
it's a
so
tough
I did.
call to make.
Yeah, it's like, and this was when nobody was getting paid to play video games. This wasn't nowadays when people, there's teams in different countries. This was back when you were just a ringer helping people test software basically and playing everyone had to have a ringer in their organization, and I was it.
So then after you got out of school, what did you do next?
Oh, you mean after I was thrown out and indicted?
So let's ask that then. So
So
After
yeah,
the explosive incident, did you get to finish university or not?
no, 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 no. Well, no, because okay. Again, funny story. While I was waiting for my indictment, didn't whether or not it was going to happen or
Mm-hmm.
not. They asked me. I was working for my uncle's construction company in Seattle, and then I went to the island. I was doing the sous chef thing and doing community service because I had to do community service after the whole
Mm-hmm.
indictment thing. It was like which the punishment, slap on the wrist, and then most people don't know for community service you can actually help kids at high schools or at schools. You can be like a teacher's assistant, but of course most schools won't let you in as a
Yeah.
teacher's assistant, right? Unless of course you grow up in a teacher's lounge because your mom was a full teacher, so you knew
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the administration. It's a small island, and they're like, yeah, sure, come on in. You can help with the computer lab. It's like, oh, okay. And then so I was doing the computer lab, and then that's when I entered the beginning of 94, entered a computer game tournament for this publisher out in Colorado and played it for a year and won it. And it was a lot of fun. And that's when they hired me. And then I went straight from there to Boulder, Colorado in 95. That's when I took off. Left the island, never to return.
So do you have any formal degrees then, or was that kind of the end of
Nope.
your formal education?
No, that was it. That was it. Junior year and junior year, that was it. And never had any motivation to go back because the field I was in didn't care about degrees. All
Yeah.
they cared about was your technical experience, which was proprietary.
Yeah.
So I taught after I did the video game thing, which I segued into once they folded. I taught proprietary software for time and attendance software companies. There were two of them in Boulder, Colorado, which is weird because there's only like 7 of them in the entire country, and 2 of them were in Boulder, and they knew each other. And they kept it a secret from each other, which was weird. They made sure, like, the owners knew each other was there, but they made sure the employees didn't know because they were afraid of too many people, like, jumping ship and people
Mm-hmm.
moving around. So I did that, and I traveled around the country and taught people in blue-collar factories software that was way too complex for them. And so I got good at boiling down hard to explain concepts into easy to digest pieces. And that's what I did for the better part. I was in Boulder for 20 years, literally from 95 till 2015. That's what I did. I basically just traveled around and because of that, I didn't get married or had kids because I was just always I was always busy doing
Mm-hmm.
something. It just never occurred to me. There wasn't. It's different with men, I think, than women. Women, that whole biological clock thing. But with a guy, if you're traveling a lot, you're busy, you're keeping mentally active, and you're dating. You don't, and the people who are dating you know that you're kind of busy and tied up. There wasn't any pressure, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm 40. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. Everybody else, they're already into their first divorce has already happened. They're already into their second marriages and kids and alimony and, all the other stuff that you have to deal with the divorces. I'm going, huh, well, I guess I dodged some bullets. So I just never took hold after that.
So what brought you to Washington State then?
Flat Earth. That's what basically happened in 2015, or say 2014. I started looking into it, and when 2015 took off, there was a producer out of New York. I wrote about her, Rebecca, from True Television, and she said, you got to leave. Just so you know, whatever you're doing in Boulder, you've got to go somewhere else because you're going to eventually. First off, you're going to be traveling a lot more because of this. She could see the writing on the wall that it was going to get really, really big. In fact, I didn't even know if I didn't. Did I send that to you? No, I probably didn't. Hang on one second.
Mm-hmm.
Let me drop this into chat. This came out. I just got shown this today. You'll probably appreciate it. This was the headline that came out. It was on the newsstands just before. Just got changed out today. Yeah, I know.
Huh.
Yeah, we're in trouble now. if because
Well,
politicians
if
are going to read this.
Newsweek.
Yeah, if Newsweek has put you on the cover, it's going to be an issue. So now I don't know what's going to happen. My channel, yeah, we'll see if my channel survives on Monday. Not because of Newsweek, but because I'm getting hammered with copyright stuff now. As once the documentary came out, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I started getting more and more copyright things. People that hated me, that were hesitant about pulling the trigger and going after me, now they are. Sorry, what was I saying? There was something about.
Oh, I asked you what brought you to
Oh, I'm
Seattle.
sorry.
You said that was
True
Flat Earth.
Television, the producer from True Television said, look, whether it's me or not, whether our company takes the project, you're going to have some sort of base operations. If you have family somewhere, you might well just put your stuff in storage because you're going to go on a ride here one of these days. And it's not gonna end anytime soon. I go, okay, but I did take her seriously because I mean she was from a legit network, and she was fired for even proposing flat Earth at the meeting in 2016, which I thought was funny. But I did. I called up family and said, all right, I've been here been in Boulder 20 years. Looks like it's time to come back. So I came back, and then immediately I went up to Victoria, Canada, and spent a year up there, which is right up the road. There was because I what's weird, my social life, which it was off and on, but once I got into Flat Earth, my social life went through the freaking roof, and I don't know why exactly. I couldn't really explain it. So when a nice woman, younger woman, way younger, asked me, she's like, "Oh, you should come up and make videos up in Victoria with me. I'm not living with anybody. Why don't you come up and hang out at my place?" She also worked for a video game company. She didn't play games, but she worked for a video game company, and so she could set me up with all this tech. And so I just sat up there, and for a year I did that, and then it fell apart eventually. I knew it was going to. And then I came back down, and I've been kind of using this as a base of operations while I keep traveling around. And this year it's gotten nutty. In fact, this year we've already done 3 conferences, one in LA, one in Auckland, New Zealand, one in Calgary, and then I still have Ohio, Stockholm, London, Mount Shasta, maybe Amsterdam, and Dallas to finish out the year. Flat Earth is on tour now this year. I mean, the fact that I'm uttering those words is just so surreal to me, to where, people, I mean, and everything that's been happening, if I live long enough to write an autobiography, it's going to be called Unsolicited. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to make any calls. People just kept calling me and calling. It's like, hey, would you like to do this? Hey, would you like to write a book? Hey, would you like to do a radio show? Hey, how would you like to write another book? How would you like to do a documentary? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Don't care. I mean, I've got a feeler out just this week. There's a company in Australia that wants me to come down for a television commercial. It's like, really? You want me to endorse your product? Why exactly?
What is that product?
They're doing it from a humorous angle, which is like, if Mark can understand this, he can get his head around this. He can obviously get around our sports app. All I have to do is, I feel like honest to God, there's so many parallels to what I've done with the movie Forrest Gump, which makes me feel kind of mixed in a way, because he did some cool things, but he wasn't exactly super sharp on the uptake. And that's what happens. I mean, seriously, when I got when these guys get a hold of me, I was thinking, oh, okay, this is that ping pong paddle scene from Forrest Gump. Well, I have to hold up the ping pong paddle. It's like, oh, great. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. To back up just a little bit, you said that Flat Earth brought you to Seattle, but before Flat Earth, before you got into that, tell me your mindset religiously, conspiratorially, government-wise. What was your headspace the day before you discovered Flat Earth?
I was conspiracy bored before I got into Flat Earth, and that's not an exaggeration. I've said this many times, where I had, if I started with JFK in 1991 before the internet, and then once the internet got rolling along, and I was really, I mean, back in the day, I mean, seriously, you could finish the internet. There wasn't that much out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it grew really, really quick, and there was some conspiracies. They came up pretty fast. The conspiracies, different websites and different things you could download. And I believe some, and some other, I had my favorites, and some I didn't, but I got a better understanding of them the more I got into software, because in my training, because I had to have empathy. I did high level support for these people. And so I had to put myself in other people's shoes. And so when I looked at conspiracies, I said, okay, I know that conspiracies are evil, horrible things sometimes, but there's a lot of times where the other side is just doing it for what they consider to be the greater good. And they make decisions that they cannot, well, they've decided that the general population doesn't get to be part of that decision process. Plain and simple. They make the broad strokes, they make moves in the chessboard that a lot of people don't understand, not justifying what they do. I'm just saying that sometimes do the ends justify the means?
That's a tough question.
That is a tough. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a case by case basis. Germany, for example, if you don't allow Pearl Harbor to be attacked, we're speaking German. It's simple. I mean, they had won the war basically. All they were doing was mopping up, and America would not get into the war. We wouldn't do it. There was nothing you could do. It's like, oh, it's so far. Who cares? You know, it wasn't like the internet was up, and so nobody knew what the hell was going on. I mean, yeah, Europe was burning. We didn't know that. I mean, we heard the stories, but you can't do it justice unless you have video. And how are you going to disseminate that video? And so, do you look in military terms? We sacrifice things. There's men that are used as bait for the greater good. It's happened. So the battleship Maine gets blown up, and we start the Spanish-American War. The Alamo gets taken down, and we start the Mexican-American War. It goes on and on. It is the oldest trick, literally the oldest trick in the book, where you walk up to somebody, you smack them on the back of the head, and when they turn around, you point at the guy next to you. It is the oldest thing ever, and we blame it. So we use that. Mothers don't like sending their sons to fight for things, but they will do it for revenge. Revenge is the greatest motivator for war that's ever been created. So that's my government thing. Real quick, religious. I didn't go to church when I was over in Colorado. I didn't, unless it was a wedding or a funeral, and I hated both of those. So there was no. Plus,
did you maintain your beliefs?
Oh yeah. As a matter, well, I fell away when I got into the tech world, because the tech world is very, at the least, agnostic. And there's a lot, I'm not going to say true atheists. I don't even know if there are true atheists out there, because a true atheist would treat every day like it was his last, because there's nothing on the other side of that curtain, nothing on the other side of the veil. Then you should live every day, seriously, like you got nothing to lose, and we don't see that. But I didn't renew any sort of faith thing when I was out in Colorado. It wasn't until I got into flat Earth that everything snapped back. And then, in fact, it snapped back in a different way, where I realized, at least for me, my role. Now, there's a lot, at least half the members of the flat Earth groups that I am in are strong Christians. At least half, at least in the United States and Canada and English-speaking countries. But when I got in, my role was obvious to me that I was going to be, the freshman recruiter. It's like, look, I can get you on campus. It's up to you guys to get them into church. It's not my role, because I cast a really, really wide net. But at the same time, and I don't want to understate this term spirituality, but the default shape, of the flat Earth model just screams that it was built, that it was created. Well, if it's created, you got a creator. At that point, even the tech guys agree. The agnostics, I go, you've only got one of two roads. Either you're talking about a heavily advanced civilization that's much older and much more powerful than ourselves, or you've got Santa Claus in a white bathrobe on Sunday morning, with the glowing thing. And really, you're just kind of splitting hairs there, because one man's advanced tech is another man's deity. So, but for me, absolutely, my faith was just locked in at that point. It's like, okay, now I get it. And then I started thinking, honestly, I talked about it in the book, which was I started thinking along the lines of why things were built the way they were built. Looking at designs, it's like, okay, which is why when I did the clues, what I was getting into was like, all right, how would I build this? And why would you build it like this? And what was the advantages of it? And it's like, oh, it's brilliant. I knew what I was looking at was, in my opinion, was divine, because I could not make any. I'm a pretty clever guy, and I could not make any design changes even if I wanted to. The designs are perfect, even though it doesn't seem like it in some ways. The only imperfections, it appears to be us. I think if you pulled human beings off of this world, it'd just run fine forever. We're the only ones that seem to have, not to steal a line from the Matrix. It's like, but every other life form in this world develops a natural equilibrium. We do not. So there you go.
Yes. So what was your first introduction into the flat Earth? How did that start?
Well, everybody's heard about it.
I've heard it several times. Just
yeah.
if you
When
have
you're
any other
growing up,
general takes on it.
yeah, you know about it. You know the whole. You've seen the images, and everyone's laughed. The cosmic waterfalls. The Thor, the movie Thor did us no favors because Asgard has cosmic waterfalls. It's like, and it's flat, and it's like, really, it's the flat world. It doesn't have a dome. It's like Rainbow Bridge. No, 2014 was when I looked into it, and didn't, again, it was just out of sheer boredom. Whereas, like, okay, all right, fine, I'll click on this stupid flat Earth video because I clicked on everything else. Again, you go to, sometimes we rent videos at video stores, and it's like, oh, see, the running joke was when you used to, you're old enough, when you used to go to Blockbuster, back when Blockbuster was a thing. It's like, seen it. What haven't I seen? Right. And then you're going through stuff. It's like, oh, okay, maybe this. That's what the feeling was. It was like, okay, flat Earth, sure, why not? And honestly, I thought I could shut it down in 3 days. Honestly, thought I could. It's like, I'll just crush this thing and be done with it. And I'll be like, well, now I have an opinion on flat Earth. 9 months later, I'm sitting there going, okay, something's wrong. I can't prove the globe in a court of law anymore. And so that's when I decided to make the Flat Earth Clues. I made it. It was more of a cry for help than anything else, which was I put it out to the internet hive mind. I've seen the internet do amazing things. The internet misses nothing. As a group mind, they miss freaking nothing. And with the exception of the Panama Canal, but I don't want to get into that right now. But I looked at them and I said, okay, I'll make the clues. And in 2015, I put them out there, and that's where everything backfired. I honestly thought that somebody was going to come back and say, okay, here's where, like you do in any forum, a forum post. It's like, I think the Earth is flat. Where did I make a mistake? And somebody says, oh yeah, here's where you made the mistake. Blah, blah, blah. Forgot to carry the tube. Blah, blah, blah. Geometry and stuff. Blah, blah, blah. You can shut down your YouTube channel now. That's what I was waiting for. And the opposite happened. That's when everything just started. Everyone kept coming at me going, you know what? This is not as crazy as it. They said the way I broke it down made it so easy to digest that people ate it. I mean, they basically and people that listened to it, they would listen to it 2 and 3 times in a row. They'd listen to the whole thing and then come back and start over and be like, okay, I think I'm following them here and here and here, and then listen to it again, and I'd hear this over and over. And sometimes they say, if I got tired, if I got tired, I just let it run. I was sleeping. I'm going, you're having me in your headphones? And you say, that's a terrible idea. I go, first off, the CIA pays top dollar for that sort of conditioning. So anyway.
So what was the first proof that you saw in whatever you were researching that made the light bulb go on?
The first thing that I saw was the flight routes in the Southern Hemisphere. That's the first thing that caught my eye, because everybody can go to Expedia or Travelocity or something like that, and you can book these flights yourself. And you start randomly picking any flights in the Southern Hemisphere, like from Africa to South America to Australia, but it's got to be south to south. And it's amazing how many go north a huge distance before they go south. I mean, they take these double connections, triple connections, flights that should only take 10 hours. They're booking of like 36 hours, 38 hours. It's like, it doesn't take 38 hours to go anywhere unless you're like taking a flight to the middle of Africa and then taking like a small plane and then like a bush vehicle out to, somewhere. And that was the first thing that caught my eye, because the guy that there was a German guy that spotted it. He was absolutely right. And if you put it on a flat map, like that one that's behind you, they angle out to where it's like a shallow dog leg or a straight line. I go, wow, that's really interesting. That's the first thing that caught my eye. That was the first physical thing that's like, okay, you might have something there, that enough to pique my interest.
Mm-hmm.
the thing that really turned me, even before, like for example, when I did the clues, I didn't even talk about the curvature of the Earth. I didn't even know what the curvature of the Earth was when I did the clues. Everybody else came out with that on their own. It was the Antarctic Treaty. That was the part that really threw me, which was because I knew people. I knew governments, and I knew that the powers that be run on greed and money and power. Excuse me. So, and these same groups said that even though the Antarctica was made out of resources, right? It was made, the mountain range made out of coal, and there's minerals and uranium and oil, that they sealed it off for all time. They locked it down. And it's like, wait a minute, what? You got to remember that, and had I heard this 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have made much sense to me. But you got to remember that in the United States, we're fracking in people's backyards right now.
Yeah.
We're buying up a lot of land, and we're just giving people briefcases full of money and saying, hey, your neighbor's doing it, and basically just carving up the West. If it's soft ground, they're going in. And yet, these same companies aren't allowed to go to Antarctica. And not only are they not allowed to go to it, this is the part that really gets me. They're not allowed to talk about it. That's the part that's completely goes against everything we are in terms of capitalism. Which means if I'm the head of British Petroleum and I want to get that oil or gas or whatever it is, I'm going to run a full page ad in the London Times and the New York Times and everything I can get. How great it would be for my British Petroleum company to go down there. You never see those ads. No one disputes it. It's the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties, and no one even argues it. And it's unilateral. Forget about the United States and London. Russia, when they broke up with the Soviet Union, why didn't they go down there? China, they're always looking for resources. Everybody's looking for resources, and none of these countries go there. They all agree. It's like they all sign this document, and it's like, oh yeah, we don't talk about it. It's like, what? Why would you not go down there? It doesn't make any damn sense. In fact, it's not even up for review until 2041. It's impossible. It's statistically impossible from a treaty standpoint. Treaties are made to be broken. Ask the Americans. We break treaties all the time. That's what we do. In fact, the whole reason for a treaty, I think, is just temporary. There's no ironclad treaty, but that's it. So that was the big one that's the one that forced me into the clues. Because that was like clue 2, I think, the bird wall. And then once people started doing long distance photography and laser tests, long distance photography, after that started up, it was over. I've watched enough of that over the last 3 years that nothing's going to take me back. Well, that, and of course, I'm sorry, one more thing, thermodynamics, which is space versus gravity, which is an atmosphere. Look, I've said this to so many people, and scientists just freak out. They don't know what to do when I say this. I said, so let's say there's a second floor to your place right now, and you turn it into a vacuum chamber. You put a cork in the ceiling, and you pull that cork. Well, what do you think is going to happen? That air is going to instantly, violently, equalize, and most of it's going to go up, depending on how big the vacuum chamber is above, and you're going to black out or you're going to die. One of those two things. Well, the question is, well, there's gravity below you right now, so why didn't gravity stop all that oxygen or the air from going up into the ceiling? And nobody can answer this. And they go, so what's your point? I go, well, what's the difference between that and space, which is even more of a pure vacuum, and it's way, way larger? Why is our atmosphere still here? And they go, well, and the answer is, not to go off on a tangent here, the answer is, well, it has to be gravity because otherwise we'd be dead. Going, wait, that's not an answer. It's like it can't be any other option except for gravity. And they go, well, no, it can't be. I go, unless it's an enclosed pressurized system. That's something under a dome. And they said, but it's not. And I go, how do you know? And they go, because of NASA. And then we get into the whole loop. And I was like, okay, fine. The United States military. They wouldn't lie. Anyway, sorry.
It's all right. Not to create a debate or anything, but you brought up a couple things that I wanted to just ask you about.
Sure.
You'd mentioned the flight routes. That was the first thing that kind of clued you in. I know that in some of the earlier videos, there was the claim that there specifically were no flights along certain routes.
Yep. In clue 7, as a matter of fact. And honestly, I was looking. I was looking quite a while. And then, but of course, again, the internet hive mind. People were digging, and they found like 5 of them. and I got them emailed to me daily, heck, hourly. I got these 5 flights emailed, and the part that threw me was, and that's why I did Clue 9. I'd already made a clue in between, and then I did Clue 9 called The Magic Show, where I was going over the routes because people were asking me to follow these flights. But beforehand, first up, two points. One was it stunned me to no end that people still didn't understand the fact that there were only like a handful of nonstop flights in the entire Southern Hemisphere. Just a handful. I mean, 90 something percent of the flights in the Southern Hemisphere are connecting flights, which should not be the case if you're flying over the South Atlantic, the South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. But the part that threw me after that was that's when I started looking. A guy from England said, "Hey, watch the flight trackers, watch the latitude and longitude coordinates when these flights go off." And part of the clue is I'm watching, and I couldn't catch them. It's like where'd the flight go? Right? It was just blink away. It would just be gone. And I would show people, I go, are you watching the same thing I am? And the flights would disappear. And the reason why they disappeared, now they've changed the algorithms now, but the reason why they disappeared is because the latitude and longitude dropped off. They didn't exist anymore. And we realized that they were only getting out of ground radar range. And then it would go into approximated or estimated mode. And that was basically it. It was like, okay, the short version is the planes are going out. And they're not lying. They know approximately where they are. They don't know exactly where they are. And then, they get to where, within ground radar range of whatever coastline it is, and then they pop back on. And that was really intriguing to me. So I did the clue called The Magic Show and talked about this, and people verified it, and they said, yeah. I said, isn't that a little strange considering the GPS system is absolutely blanket coverage, overlapping, 32. And then I ran into and then I had flight instructors and pilots that were saying, no, it also happens in the Northern Hemisphere. I go, what? I go, yeah, watch a flight leave from Hawaii or from San Francisco to Hawaii. Same thing happens. And I didn't make a clue on it, but I probably should have. They go, remember, there's no islands between San Francisco and Hawaii. It's a long stretch. And when you get off of California, it blips out. And in fact, they even said there are times that here's the part that freaked me out. He goes, there are times where we absolutely proved there was ground radar based, which was when you go in certain places, they're dead zones in the United States. Continental United States, where you're flying, you do not have absolute GPS coverage. It blinks out for a little while. Not very long, maybe 10, 15 minutes, then blinks back on and it comes in. That's because you don't have complete radar coverage everywhere. That was fascinating.
Have you ever attempted to actually experiment with that over the ocean? Because I know that there's been several people that have brought their own personal GPS trackers onto planes, right, and tracked the flight as they went over the oceans, and they maintained GPS signal.
Oh, it didn't disappear. No, that's not what I'm questioning. In fact, I've had quite a few people that have asked me that, and I said, send me the freaking latitude and longitude coordinates. In fact, I had a sailboat guy when I was down in New Zealand. He goes, I have sailed around Antarctica. Good. I go, send me the latitude and longitude. Give me the chart. Tell me exactly where you are. Crickets. Same sort of thing when real quick because remember. People, they'll say, oh yeah, I've seen the curve from an airplane. Oh my God, how many people have told me that? It's like, yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen a curve from the airplane. I've had a bunch of people say, I've seen it from a mountaintop, I've seen it from a balloon, and tons of people have said, oh yeah, I see it from the beach. I go, fine. I go, take a picture of it. Hold a straight edge up to it. Tell me if the curve's still there. If it is, send it to me. I will quit Flat Earth tomorrow. Nobody sends me anything. It's not to go into the whole Orwellian thing, but it's not that they see the curve. It's that they want to see the curve. Every pilot I talk to says the same thing. They said, oh yeah, there's no curve up there. But it has to be curved, right? Because we're told it's curved. Every pilot says the exact same thing, but they don't. I go, why don't you tell anybody? He goes, it's like, honestly, pilots are he says they're so busy. I mean, really, just from takeoff to landing, if nobody dies, that's great. Fantastic. They're really busy during that entire time. Then they just rinse and repeat. Plus the line that I thought was great was, he goes, who are we going to tell? And what exactly would we say? I go, it's like, hey, it looks really flat up here. In fact, there was a woman who became a flat earther, 737 pilot, flew for KLM over in Europe. And she told her corporate doctor this. And he goes, yeah, you're not going up until you renounce that. He goes, you cannot get on a plane and say that you're into flat Earth. You can't do it because we're not gonna have that. And she, as far as I know, she's still at a desk. They won't fire her. They will just put her at a desk. So sorry.
Are you familiar? Yeah, no worries, man. This is the dialogue. Are you aware of the YouTube creator Greater Sapien? Have you ever heard of him?
Oh my God. Yes. Why?
Okay. Did you see his video? This is probably like 6 months ago that he did a trip from California to Australia to the edge of Antarctica to South America to Africa and back. The entire thing he personally logged with GPS. So you'd mentioned that nobody had provided that information for you when you'd asked for it. So Greater Sapien is one person that I would say would have that data, and he did several videos. Again, I think it's like 5 or 6 months ago, but he logged the entire route as he went by, and he had to leave his GPS like attached to the window of the airplane to get reception through the airplane. I would just encourage you to look at that.
I will look at that. I will. He was also the guy, if I'm not mistaken, and unfortunately, you know how much content there is out there. I barely get a chance to scratch anything, let alone. Now, I'm not going to call him a troll, although he's borderline because he hates us. He was the one that booked a $10,000 trip, if I'm not mistaken, for a what is it, the transpolar thing, and the site went down and disappeared, and he lost his money, and I felt bad for him. I really did, but I was real stunned because that was one of the most professional looking things I'd seen up until that point. I mean, you know, the promo videos and everything was super polished, and they had collected money, and it seemed so legit because they were also asking. They were saying that no one gets to bring on, because they knew that flat earthers were going to try to book some of this, and they said no one gets to bring on like scientific instruments. And I'm going, okay, well, they must be legit. They must be. And then then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. I mean, I rarely do you see that where, I mean, even Greater Sapien was at a complete loss. But I did feel bad for him, and I know that I think it was after that when he did the trip, because he probably got so much pressure at that point. But yeah, no, I'd love to see the results. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, it was interesting results. And then another thing that you'd mentioned was Antarctica. Do you believe that Antarctica is off limits to the average person?
No, not at all. You can go. No, I talked about this in the clues. I said, look, if you want to go out there, you can book. If you're an American, I don't know what the Korean dollars. It's like 10, 15 grand, and you can get you can go out to the peninsula and go on the rafts and take pictures with penguins. Sure, you can go there, and they will take you to what they call the South Pole. No question.
Now, do you believe that you could you explore Antarctica personally?
Personally, without permits? No, I absolutely know you can't. Well, I mean, look at what's his face, Jarl Landahoy, or whatever that guy's name was, that tried to do it himself, and they like sued the hell out of him as soon as he got back, because you're not supposed to do it without permits.
Yeah, and I understand that if you were under the mindset that this is a protected land and we want to keep it safe, you're going to have permits to go there, kind of thing.
But why is it protected? That's the bigger question. Who cares? I mean, again, remember, when that treaty was put in place, environmentalism was not even a conscious thought in the world. I mean, we didn't care about anything. We burned it down. It's like bigger engines, bigger. So why would you seal it off? And why would? And I know you've got some answers on your side, but look, Greenpeace wasn't even founded until '72, and that was just a couple guys in a raft, and they cared more about whales than anything else.
Yeah, I just know there's a lot of vocal flat Earth proponents on YouTube that are adamant that you cannot go to Antarctica. You just can't do it. It's impossible. But none of them have ever actually tried. So that's kind of what I was going for, is like, if you go under the mindset that, yes, we're protecting this land, even if the protection is bogus,
right? You
have to have permits to get there to protect it. Do you think that if you tried, maybe not you because you're big name, but average person, if average person wanted to go on their own across Antarctica, do you think they would be prevented by a government?
Eventually they would. I'm sorry, I was looking at a fly. If eventually they would, and I know there was the guy that supposedly hauled 300 and something pounds worth of sled across it recently, and his route seemed awfully short, even on a globalist map. But eventually, yes. I mean, you couldn't just choose any course you wanted. Let's put it that way. It would be regulated the entire way. I mean, you would have to have your route absolutely approved from second one. And again, the secondary layers of the treaty, which cover the environmentalist side, make it even worse. You know, like you have to take your waste with you and all that.
Pack it in, pack it out.
Yeah, which is again absolutely what exactly are you? What exactly is it for? Again, no animal life, no plant life, no older civilizations, just miles and miles of horrible ice at 14,000 feet. Again, which is really weird for a continent. Most people don't even know that most of the continent sits twice the altitude or twice the height of altitude sickness, which kicks in at about 7,000 feet. So anyway, go on.
Do you know anybody who's actually tried to do that?
On our side?
Yes, or anyone. Do you know anyone who has tried to explore Antarctica?
Yeah, I mean, every year or so, there's somebody that claims that they've done something down in Antarctica. But you got to remember, we take that with a grain of salt because every week we hear new space stories as well. So they kind of go in hand, which is look, NASA keeps saying that they're going to the moon, and people say that Antarctica, some little side story in Antarctica, we don't give it much credence.
You know, the only reason I ask is, again, because a lot of people will say you can't do it, and
Right.
it's hard to argue that point until you can point to somebody who's actually tried and failed.
Oh, sure, I got you.
Okay. You mentioned space,
right?
Without talking about NASA, what do you?
Tough.
Well, and we don't need to, because I'm not talking about rocketry, nothing like that.
Okay.
What's up there?
A structure. Again, we're living in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling. And it's so massive that you could fit not only can you fit an entire ecosystem, but every other system that feeds into the ecosystem. So the jet stream, which is less than 10 miles up, I think. And then think of it this way, if most of our civilization 99% of our civilization exists at less than 10 miles high. The ceiling of this place doesn't have to be that high. And I know people said, well, it could be anywhere from 400 kilometers to 3,000, give or take. And it's like, might be, but either way, whatever the ceiling of this place is shallow by comparison. It's way wider than it is high. So it'd look on the outside like a shallow sports stadium. What's it made out of? Take your pick. Heavy element, heavy water, electromagnetic field, unified field, high frequency. Could be any one of them.
What about what we see up there?
Just
stars, space.
Lights in the sky, and that's all it is. I mean, I'm old enough. I know you probably. I don't know where you grew up, but I got to go to planetariums when I was younger, and did not appreciate them because it was super boring. Nobody goes to a planetarium. You know, it was always the weekend with Laser Floyd and Laser Led Zeppelin. Those were the only interesting things about planetariums. But I didn't appreciate them until now. I was like, oh, I get it, because that's how we used to show people. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is what the stars look like, and which is why the Truman Show resonated so much with me later, which was, could we? Granted, our resources are limited. Could you build a planetarium that was 20 miles wide? Yeah, you could. You absolutely could. It would cost billions to do it, but you absolutely could pull it off. And if you were an advanced civilization, could you build one that was thousands of miles wide? I think very easily done. I mean, it's just engineering, resources. We didn't have anything to do with it. But anyway, sorry. Lights in the sky, planets in the stars. The sun and the moon are much bigger by comparison, much more active, but they're still tiny. One of the things that, sorry, I got to go off on a tangent real quick, because I've been thinking about this more and more, and that one of the flaws of the flat Earth model, when it's shown to people, is you always have this big sun and the moon going around, you know, like a mobile above a child's crib, which is true, but that's the only way you can show it, is that it's like, oh, okay, this is what the sun and the moon, but the sun and the moon can't be that freaking big, because the sun and the moon would be still thousands of miles wide. In fact, the moon would actually be almost damn actual size in that case. We're talking about a moon and the sun that are just tiny by comparison, you know, 50 miles or wide or less, which would make it way more realistic. But it's really hard to depict that on a map. You're just talking about a tiny, tiny light that's going across it. So, sorry.
So to try and get into the minutia of this particular topic, because I'm fascinated with astronomy. I have several telescopes. I've taken pictures of my own.
Oh boy,
I'm kind of an astronomy nerd.
That's right.
When I look at Jupiter through my telescope, physically, what am I looking at?
You're looking at a light. In fact, I got that exact question from a radio show guy in England, and he just beat this thing to death. He just kept asking the same question. He goes, "I've seen the rings of Saturn. I've seen the moons of Jupiter." I said, "Fine," and I'm not being condescending in any way. I mean, I've had this argument tons and tons of times, which is fine. Take a pair of binoculars, go into the planetarium, look up at Jupiter, which is now up on the ceiling. Get your eyes adjusted. It looks very realistic. Nowadays, it's actually pretty good. Does it look more or less real? And you're looking with the binoculars, and you say, well, that doesn't really count because we're in a building. Actually, that's my point. I go, who's saying when you're not walking out of that building, you're just not in a much, much bigger building? We're talking about a resolution here that's far advanced. I mean, we're up to 8K is being released this year, right? What if, and think about this, we've only had HD for 20 years, and 20 years ago, it was terrible by comparison. What if we had another 500 years? What could we do with resolution? What could we build? I know for a fact, because I've seen them, that we can build skylights now with a full moving sun with perspective and a blue sky. You can put in your room right now on a sunny day, you would never tell it wasn't the real thing. And we've had this technology. We've had this technology for 5 years. So who's to say when you're not looking up there that you're not just looking at looking at lights in the sky?
So you would feel that and if I'm misquoting you, or if you're not certain, because obviously you can't be certain about everything.
Oh, sure.
But the images we see in the sky at night, do you feel they are projected on it? Do you feel that it's a screen? Do you think that there's something outside the firmament?
It's a tough call. I don't think it's rear projection front projection. Sorry, I'm confusing the old technology. Is front projection the... I think it's built in. It's not being shot from down. It's not being lit from down here. Okay. Not like, well, yeah, you're good point, because a lot of planetariums shoot the images obviously from the middle of the stage, and they shoot around. But if you had unlimited money, that's not what you would do with the planetarium. Even now, you would just build in a whole bunch of freaking flat panels and integrate them, and you could make amazing stuff. So no, it's it's lit up there. It's not shot from down here. No way.
You think it's part of the dome?
The what?
You would say that it's part of the dome structure.
It's either built in. Yeah, it's either built in. That's what I would do anyway. It's either built into the dome or it's just on the outside of it. Of course, if you want to get into the really weird arguments, which is a whole nother thing, and that's the whole virtual aspect of it, which is, what do we do in simulations now? I mean, truthfully, and I talked about this in the last chapter, which was, if it is flat and it's enclosed, it's probably digital. Just because at that point, and because everyone thinks mechanically, not to go into a biblical side of things, but everyone, always thought that, we always describe God and his tools in whatever tools we have, right? And then, but it's like, look, we didn't invent programming. We can do that's my field. We can do amazing things. We've been able to do amazing things for the last 15 years. And there's something that we put up there when we do sky simulations, any game, Warcraft on this machine. It's called a skybox, which is basically, the sky is literally just a box that's laid over the top. And you think, well, wouldn't it be like a dome? It's like, no, we just simulate the dome, because computers don't like thinking in circles or any round edges. Computers think in squares. They don't know what to do with circles. Human beings can draw circles naturally, but computers literally just, pixels are all squares. They're little boxes. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, from a projection standpoint, yes. If you're talking about a physical projection, then yes, it's in the dome. But if you want to get even more advanced, then it's probably, just part of the skybox system.
Then my next question to that would be, what about the satellites we can see at night now that have not been there historically?
Oh, no, I'm not saying
part of that.
Oh, no, no,
I'm not saying simulation, or is that something different?
No, satellites exist, absolutely. In fact, I got into not a heated discussion with a guy down in it was an Australian television show just recently, and it was an American of all things. And he goes, "How are we even talking right now?" I go through the underwater fiber optics we've been laying forever.
Yeah.
I go satellites transmit like dick for bandwidth. And I go the NASA. In fact, I go the NASA high altitude balloon program has been going around since the 1950s. It was never a secret. We with hydrogen balloons we can load massive payloads, upwards of 4 tons. He goes, yeah, I know. I work on that program. I'm going. Why are you admitting this to me? This is not something you want to talk about. But no, there's satellites up there. I'm just saying that they're not. Most of them are put up by rockets because you wouldn't. If you can use a hydrogen balloon for literally pennies on the dollar, why?
But can you control a hydrogen balloon?
I think
Can
you
you
could if you
control
knew I think well control-ish with whatever jet stream you're going up to. I mean, I don't know what's above the 10-mile jet stream, that the planes use. There may be something higher that's I mean, I don't know. That's much quicker. Maybe you can kind of approximate it. I mean, I don't from what I understand, they launch a lot of these things. So maybe you can kind of leapfrog signals. And honestly, what signals are you using other than the military? What sort of bandwidth are you transmitting and for what end? I mean, if fiber optics handles most of the load, I'm just not exactly sure. At that point, you have to question what satellites are actually being used for things and what are just being used for corporations that think they're putting up satellites. I'm sorry,
Well,
here's another
yeah.
thing real quick about satellites, which is something that always bothered me when I was out in Colorado, because I used to do a lot of sky watching myself, mostly because I was looking for UFOs with night vision binoculars. And every once in a while, you'd hear, but you're an astronomer. Every once in a while, you'd hear about the meteor showers that would come in, right?
Mhm.
It's like, oh yeah, annual or biannual or whatever meteor showers. No one seemed to care much about them. These meteor showers, they would come into the atmosphere, and there's got to be satellites up there, but no satellites ever got tagged or winged, or I mean, it's like no one would ever watching CBS, and all of a sudden, blink, CBS would go down, or what you. And so when the movie Gravity came out with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, something really bugged me about that movie, which was the whole premise was that there was this cascade effect of, okay, one satellite knocks into another satellite, and pretty soon the whole sky is full of jagged metal flying at thousands of miles an hour, and it runs into them and begin your storyline. We never see that ever. And if you know statistics at all, eventually, if a satellite goes off course, if they are, circling, in that sort of pattern, that's exactly what would happen. They would start cascading. I mean, it would only be a matter of time before, once it gets off course, it would run into another, and then that would run into another. And yeah, it may not happen on the 5th orbit or the 10th orbit, but on the 20th orbit, it's going to. And the whole sky would just turn into a garbage heap of flying metal. And that's not what we see. Everything runs just fine. They die on their own, and nothing seems to be a problem. And nobody seems, again, worried. It's like, oh, the meteor shower's coming. It's like, oh, hey, shouldn't you be retasking those satellites like we saw in Patriot games? Are you like moving them all over the place? I never saw that. It kind of bugged me.
Now, I actually did a video like 4 months ago about meteors, specifically about meteor showers.
Yeah.
How I feel how the phenomenon occurs conforms with a globe Earth. Are you aware what the scientific description of what the cause of meteor showers is? Like the root cause of why?
No.
Comets.
Comets just passing by, dropping off a few fragments, and
Correct. So basically, every comet in their orbit is a trail of dust that they're leaving as they go by. And then the explanation for meteor showers is that the Earth is passing through that corridor of dust that's been left by a comet.
Sure.
So when a comet is recent, it's usually really high peak for a meteor shower because it's just been left behind. Halley's Comet actually is supposed to be the cause for 2 different meteor showers for on the inbound journey of Halley's Comet and the outbound journey.
Right.
Now, the one thing that really caught me off guard on this when I was looking into it was that, so trying to think of a way to imagine it, if you imagine a corridor of dust vertical, and the Earth is coming this way in its orbit, it's only the front side of the Earth that is plowing through the orbit.
Sure.
And that's what we see. And now if you imagine the sun is up here, dust lane is here, on this front half of the Earth, the upper quarter is daylight, the lower quarter is nighttime. So the upper quarter, you wouldn't see it because the sun's out. The lower quarter is where you would see the peak of the meteor shower, and that's what we observe. The best meteor showers are observed, all meteor showers, the peak of them is between midnight and sunrise because they're coming up around on the forward-facing side as it plows through the dust.
Cool.
So that, like I said, I did a video on that 4 or 5 months ago. It's one of the things to me that's independent of pretty much every other, government aspects, conspiracies, that fits with the heliocentric model because the rear-facing side of the Earth doesn't have that peak of meteor strikes. And meteor strikes, or as they ionize coming through the atmosphere, you can actually pick them up on radio signal if you know how. I don't, but I've know people who do.
Right.
And on the sunlit side, where you can't physically see the meteor streaks, you can still pick them up with the radio signal. So I would encourage you to look into that. It's one of the things that makes me think that the Earth is round.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to that. That's again.
No. It's groovy. It's groovy. And by the way, we don't. You probably already knew this. Everybody in my circles, we don't actually use the word round, which was interesting because of the Newsweek thing. It's like, really, guys? Because round. Remember, round can also be two-dimensional. It's not sphere. It's not ball. It's not globe. It's kind of how we find out who's where. Yeah. If people use the word round enough times in a sentence, like, okay, I know where you are. You're. Anyway, go ahead.
One of the other things that you'd mentioned, we were talking about satellites, that balloons might be what we see in the sky, and I'm not going to argue or discuss the purpose of them, bandwidth and communication, but I've seen enough of them up in the sky that there's something up there. You can't deny there is something. Where it's at is the question.
Here, you're absolutely right. Here's the other thing real quick about satellites. When I was watching them, I remember the reason why I grabbed it. Seriously, if you get a chance, pick up some night vision binoculars. You can, in a 5 power, you generally, like a Gen 1, don't spend a lot of money on them. A Gen 2, they cost a lot of money, but that's meant for distinguishing who's your neighbor and who's not. If you're just looking up in the sky.
Just so you know, I'm active duty military, so I have a locker full of them at the office.
Perfect. Well, but are those general night vision or like the flip down over the helmet type?
We've got some that are for scopes as well.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. If you get a chance, there was a British guy. I remember I was bored at the time, and he goes, you want to look at some weird stuff? He goes, go out at night with some night vision binoculars and just get your eyes adjusted and start looking. And I go, whatever. Sure, why not? So I bought some on Amazon, and most of them are Russian made, which is interesting that they cornered the market on most night vision shit. And I was looking up there, and the first day I remember I was going, literally the whole first night I'm going, super boring. I mean, when you look through, I mean, the sky is crawling with stuff. I mean, there's just crawling with stuff. It's like they live. I mean, your lives like, wow, there's and that was the thing. I said, man, there's a lot of satellites. This was way before I was into flat Earth, right? This was back in 2012. And then the next day I go out, it's like, oh, I'm gonna look for more satellites. And I look and I start seeing some that aren't acting in a normal satellite way. And I mean, like slowing. The one that just killed me is like he slowed down, like he was lost. Turned right, went ballistic, and then went off at unbelievable speed and altitude. And then I was seeing flying in squadrons and stuff like that. And I'm going, okay, these are not birds. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. So what I don't tell people a lot about this, but I say there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that I don't think is us. I don't know whose it is. I don't know what civilizations it is, but I don't think it's us. And I know the American military would love to take credit for it. Like they take her out with a lot of things, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that there isn't satellites.
What do you think the space station is? Not what's up there, but because I've twice I have photographed the space station as it transited in front of the sun.
Oh, sure.
It took a lot of effort to get it done, and timing and equipment and stuff like that. But the first time I photographed it was a 3/4 of a second transit time across the entire disk of the sun, and I got 5 images at high speed.
Wow.
And you can still see what it is. I mean, it is the general shape and outline, and even Jaron Campanella has done this as well.
Sure.
What do you think I took a picture of?
Don't know. Some sort of military technology, obviously, since NASA's all military. Do I think that there's something up there? Yes, I do. No question. I've never questioned that. I know that people have taken shots of it. That is not in dispute. There's something big up there, and it looks sort of like what they describe. Sure. Do I think there's people up there? No. No, not a chance. If there were, they would not be using the absolutely, and you've watched some of this stuff, the horrid production value. I mean, it's embarrassing how bad it is. And I'm trying to figure out, that's the part that bugs me more than anything. It's almost like they want to get caught. Like they're fudging, they're smudging up the work deliberately. I've never seen even your, oh my God, I know Hollywood people, even your worst B and C list directors would not use some of the techniques they're using. And yet they are. It's like, what? Why? Nobody. But then again, it shouldn't necessarily surprise me because the Apollo stuff aged so terribly. But
so anyway. with the ISS, and this is in a lot of my videos and my thought process is if you can find one thing and just beat it to death and figure out what it is, that's kind of what I don't like leaving things hanging without answers. That's why I kind of dig into these to get your perspective on them.
Sure.
With the ISS, there's a website that you can use to predict transits. Put in your location over the next 30 days. It'll give you when they're supposed to be, but supposedly it moves once in a while, so it'll change.
Sure.
Rarely is it like on your doorstep. Every time I've done it, I've had to drive like 10 miles.
Sure.
But the 2 times I've done it, it was exactly when it was predicted. It was exactly how it was supposed to be predicted.
Right.
If you look into that just a little bit further, and again, Jaron Campanella did this, so it's not like somebody did it for me. Nobody knew I was going to do it. Nobody knew he was going to do it. So something is physically up there blocking the light of the sun.
Sure.
Now, if that was part of the screen or the dome, I could see that. But if you look at this program on a map,
right,
where it predicts the transit's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
And if you overlay it with the current course of the ISS, I've done the math on it, and there was a transit in South America, and 13 minutes later in Spain.
Okay.
So whatever that thing is in the sky has to be going fast enough to get from South America to Spain for those 2 separate observers. Okay. That's pretty fast for any type of craft.
Sure.
What would you say to that?
I would say that as much as the earlier statement where I said that America would like to take some credit for things that they shouldn't, we also have the ability to keep secrets. What I try to tell people is, look, until there was a U-2 spy plane that was shot down over the Soviet Union in the 1960s, we didn't have one. It didn't exist. As a matter of fact, they even tried to push it off as a NASA research vehicle, which I thought was hilarious. When the SR-71 was finally declassified, it had already made it through its inception to retirement, and nobody had ever seen it.
Nobody knew.
And the line that I loved so much from the Air Force general was when they were asking him, at this meeting, it's like, oh, hey, what are you going to replace it with? He goes, oh, nothing. It's like, what? It's like, what? It's like, what? Seriously, I almost developed a facial tic. It's like, oh, you clever little. And even though they knew full well, it's like, no, we only reason declassifying this. And yes, everybody knows, for example, that there is some sort of Aurora project out there that's happening, and it's so freaking fast. But by the time you hear it, it is gone, and the only thing they can even record is the donuts and a rope engine trail from the pulse detonation engine. And we've had that for years. Whatever's up there,
since the late 90s, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's an amazing. I love the fact that like NASA was giving some of the nerds grief because they were releasing models of this thing, little plastic models, and like speculated on that it was running on like a slush kerosene engine, or like a pulse detonation engine. Was fascinating. That it was generating so much torque that it could run on RPMs that were almost non-existent. Basically, you're basically riding an explosion, which is, boom, boom. And it was, anyway, but again, I've never ever said this. Look, there's something up there. What technology they're using, God only knows. Do I think it's real technology? Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, I don't think it's a U-2 spy plane necessarily, because the U-2 it flies very, very high, but it doesn't fly very, very fast. So whatever it is really cruising. I don't know. I mean, there's some people who have said it's a projection, and yeah, you could make a projection go that fast, but it's like, okay, would it be our projection? Because it wouldn't be the builder's projection. But then we're getting into some weird stuff.
That's kind of the question that one of the things that And honestly, when I first got into the flat Earth, that was my question. It's like, okay, if you think this is a projection, and we're adding the projection of satellites and stuff to the sky, doesn't that mean we now control the dome?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
at that point we're going into areas that fuck, we don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
all I can tell you is there's something up there, but whatever is up there, what you're seeing the transit, yeah, that part seems to be as advertised. It's like, okay, speed, maybe relative size, although we can't really tell with perspective, but the speed at the very least, it's covering the distance. But the interior stuff just wrecks it. Not to go into movie plot lines, but they just don't match up, which is there's just too many inconsistencies with the interior shots. And sorry, after Mike Helmick, I mean, if any doubts I had, after Mike Helmick did that video about where the guy reached for the hat that wasn't there and put it off to the side, I've never seen that before in my life in anything. It was like what? And it's like, and I try to anyone whenever I do public stuff, I try to tell people, anyone that might be listening at NASA, it's like, look, don't ever do live events. Just don't do it. I know you want to talk to school kids. I know that's a cool thing. It's like, oh, get this grade school to talk to. No, don't do it. It's too dangerous. There's a reason why we do not do live television anymore. In networks, it's just there's too many mistakes. Every once in a while, someone say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do a live episode of whatever Law and Order episode,"
and it's a major event.
Yeah, it's a major event, and kids don't understand that it's a major event because it's so hard to do on your first take. Everything is like one take. That's all you get. It's like, really, and then the actors get really nervous. But anyway, so sorry. What else?
For the interior shots, have you seen the video of Chris Hadfield and the wringing out the water on the rag?
Probably. I've seen so many. I've most of the water stuff I've seen is with women. I haven't seen too many of Chris. Chris is all over the place, but
yeah.
Why?
This was really interesting when it was about 15-20 minutes long, single cut, no edits or anything like that, and it was live with school kids. So he's interacting with the kids. So appears to be live, 15 minutes, so it's unedited. Right. And he takes a rag, fills it full of water, gets it so that you've got this drenched rag, and then he squeezed it, and the water just goes all over the rag itself and up his arms and just kind of clings to it. Sure. In what would appear to be a zero-G environment.
Sure.
It's one, and again, it's one of those things to me that says I don't see how that video could have been faked. I don't understand how this. Yeah, there's other videos where weird things happen, but that video, I don't know how that could have been faked because it was the length of it, the liveness of it, and the zero-G effects.
I can only tell you from being in the gaming industry in that we have cutting edge stuff, especially one of the big things, and I'm going to blame nerds on this one because I am somewhat of a nerd, but not an uber Zune dweeby. And that is, they were always really big on shadows and liquid. That was always the big thing was, okay, what's the cutting edge in shadows and liquid? And when they got to liquid, when they could do it in real time, that's when I knew that just almost everything was possible. They couldn't do everything. We still have a problem with doing live human faces, from scratch because there's too many little random variances and stuff. But we can do a lot with liquid, a lot more than I even thought was possible even a couple of years ago. In real time. So what can I tell you? I mean, I'm sure it looked real, but we can make a lot of stuff look real. That one here, I'll counter with this. The blue screen thing, and I know some people say it wasn't blue screen. And some people still even to this day claim it's like, no, they don't use blue screen anymore. It's like, yes, they do. They use blue screen for darker environments, but if you're out in the daylight, they use green screen. It's common knowledge in Hollywood. Where I think it was Tim Peake, where you probably saw it, where George Bush was being pushed in front of the monitor, and Tim Peake was in the background with the blue screen behind him. And it was a cloth blue screen. And I knew when I was watching that how it got through. How it got through the filters. That shouldn't have been shown, but the reason it got shown was because you had, and I only knew this because of all the media stuff I've been doing over the last couple of years, where the ex-presidents, his people had priority over the NASA people as far as releasing this, meaning
Mm-hmm.
George Bush's team is like, we want to approve the footage that when we were showing to him at NASA, right? And the NASA people are like, oh, okay, sure. Well, they have precedent, they have jurisdiction, and so it's like, okay, yeah,
It went
we'll
through the
release.
wrong filter.
Yeah, it's really wrong for because remember George Bush's guys, they wouldn't care. They'd be like, okay, how
Mm-hmm.
does he look? Is he drooling? No, he's not drooling. Good, let's go with that. They could have cared less was on the monitors behind them, and so there's like, oh yeah, that's the shot we're gonna make. And at that point, I mean, look, it happens in media all the time. So anyway, sorry,
Okay.
what else can I give you on that? We can do a lot with video cards nowadays. In real time, we can do amazing stuff.
Next topic.
Yep.
The movie, the documentary.
Behind the Curve, yeah.
Talk to me about that. What are your thoughts?
Blessing and a curse at the same time. I dedicated an entire chapter to it in the book. I tried to be as upfront as I could with a lot of things. What it turned out to be for me anyway, I'm still not. I would not change a damn thing in that movie, and here's why. It became a Trojan horse for us. I sat on the audiences. This thing got so much traction, and we did 28 film festivals in 7 countries or something like that. It was ridiculous. It should have never done that well, but it made the audience feel safe. And and it did so. It was getting so much traction that they were sending me out to some of the festivals, and I was sitting in the audience with these people and they didn't know who I was. So I'd be sitting, and of course, every once in a while they'd like look over. I'd like wear a hat, and hopefully they didn't see me. But for the first 20 or 30 minutes, they didn't even think it was real. That's the part that threw them. They thought it was like a piece of docufiction. In fact, there was
a spoof.
yeah, well, no,
Yeah.
not even a spoof. It's kind of like Spinal Tap, where everyone
Yeah.
played it straight. Not like a mockumentary like Something in the Wind or Best in Show, or that guy that the director always does freaking mockumentaries. There was this. I'll tell you a quick story. There was an editor in Hollywood who was friends of the editor of this movie, and he knew nothing about it. And the Behind the Curve guy, he goes, okay, watch this. I'm not going to tell you anything. Just watch it. And he watches the whole thing. At the end, he goes, wow, man, you have been holding out on me. He goes, what? He goes, where did you get the budget for this thing? He goes, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, those actors, they played it so straight. Nobody flinched. And he goes, no, man, they weren't actors. They were all real. And he goes, and they apparently the guy just mind blown. He's going, that whole conference, that actually happened? Because I was there, man. So here's where it could have been better. And we didn't even know, honest to God, until I heard the director's commentary, which was only on the iTunes version. And actually it's on the DVD, not that anyone buys DVDs, but apparently it's on there. In the director's commentary, which was super, super boring, until they got to the end. And there was the part where the 12-year-old kid walked up to the microphone and was asking me questions when I was on stage. They all jumped on that and they said, okay, this is where we had to take a stand. And, basically for the children, we had to protect the kids. So, all fun and games until the kids are involved. It's like, really? And at that point, that's when they had to tweak the film to make it absolutely clear that what side they were taking. Up until that point, it was supposed to be just a human interest piece. But when that happened, and you remember, by the time they got to Raleigh, most of it was already in the can. So they couldn't go back and shoot everything. Remember, they were running on fumes anyway. They took multiple credit cards to finance this movie. It was really a low budget film, and I mean, they did a lot for what they had. I mean, they maximized every dollar. I mean, I stayed at Airbnbs with these guys, and that's when they went after Jaron and went after Bob and took a few shots here and there and painted it the way they did in editing, which was again fine in my opinion, only because it made the audience feel somewhat safe. Because the first question they were always asked during these film festivals was, are you guys flat earthers? When they got up on stage, that was the first question of the audience, because had they said yes, it would have been a propaganda film. But because none of them believed in it, in fact, one of them, one of the producers was very staunch anti-conspiracy, and one of the other guys, Daniel Clark, the director, is heavy science, but he likes voicing, he wants to see different views put out there, and so it's like, okay, but because of that, it was fine because the audience felt safe, and even the title Behind the Curve can be taken either way. It could be taken like, oh, okay, they're behind the curve, they're a little slow, or is there anything behind the curve? And so, I mean, I would have gone beyond the curve, but whatever, it's fine. It worked. But because of that, the audience got these nice doses of, okay, flat earther scientist, flat earther psychiatrist, flat earther astronaut, and so on and so on. So they'd be these, I could feel it in the audience, like, oh, okay, all right, here's a sane person. I'm going to listen to him for a while. Oh, guys, another flat earther. I can't take it. And honestly, there were very few walkouts in the film because of that. And of course, when they took the shot at Jaren at the end, I knew it was going to happen. To be fair, Jaren deserved it because well, look, he's the first one to say it. It's like, never ever do the test live. Remember live? Don't ever do it the first time in front of the camera. Live. It's like, do the freaking experiment before you go out there. And in fact, not only, it was even worse than I had thought, even worse than anyone even had talked about, which was Jaren hadn't even gone out during the daytime to scope the site out. He literally just went out at night and melted his condenser the first time, just melted it because he had the laser on so long. Everyone keeps forgetting that if you buy a really high-end laser, even military-grade lasers, you can't just let them run. You just can't turn it on and let's have a sandwich. No, you have to turn it off every couple minutes because it's just going to fuse. And he melted the condenser, and so you completely blew the test. And Daniel didn't show that, and so Jaren felt terrible, because they had to spend money to come up there. And so after the conference, Jaren invites him up again. No, I totally got it this time. I totally got it. Come up again. Does the same freaking thing. He goes up there at nighttime, like, yeah, let's just do it. And still didn't have. What we didn't know was much later, Jaren, after he was catching so much flack that he finally went out there during the daytime. And this was not that long ago, right? This is like this year, 2019. He was like, and he goes out there. He goes, huh? He goes, I didn't have line of sight. It's like, dude, what were you thinking? It's like, why would you not have line? Oh, you're killing me. And plus, look, I appreciate the Google Maps says the road is kind of flat, but I mean, it was a dirt road and there was all sorts of, it wasn't a paved road. Go anywhere, go to an airport runway, go to anywhere. But look, he did fine, but Daniel took that shot and painted it the way he did. Sorry. Sorry. I know I'm all over the place, but I still wouldn't change a thing because I saw, had I watched it and not been in the audience, I would have changed some bunch of stuff. But after watching the audiences and look, that not only did it do all those film festivals, but then the producers, who always have their doubts because most of their stuff gets shot down. Well, it's not going to sell. It's like, no, iTunes picked it up immediately, and Amazon and Google Play and iTunes or YouTube Red, and then Netflix picked it up, and the response was always the same, which was it always prompted all these questions, which was, no, did it convert people? No, of course not. You're not going to convert somebody in 100 minutes, but a lot of people were asking questions, and my email load doubled. Sorry, go.
Yeah, I'll admit that the ending of that movie gave the Globe Earth YouTube community a continuing poke at Jaren.
Yeah.
Just about any video you'll see of his, you'll see somebody down in the comments section with nothing but interesting.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah. Jaren did, not knocking Jaren. He does some good stuff. In this case, but he admitted on his podcast, he goes, just a tip to everybody, he goes, don't ever do it live the first time because there's always problems. In fact, the people we've sent out all over the place, it's like you never get it right the first time. Like the very first laser test he ever did, he was like the first person to do laser tests. He didn't realize there was a 2 foot per mile beam dispersion. And so it's
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like this big green floodlight on the other side. He's going, well, that's not going to work. So
a little more research before the next one.
Yeah, so they kept refining it, and I mean, I will say this: there's a lot of not even armchair, just amateur experimenters out there that have to they run into the hurdles the same as anyone else. I mean, I try to tell you, oh, look, watch these videos before you go out there. That way you won't at least run into the basic problems. But anyway.
Well, speaking of armchair experimenters, the Cavendish experiment?
Yes.
I have one in my spare bedroom that I'm building myself. I've been building it for about the past 6 months. And honestly, again, I believe the Earth is a globe. I believe that gravity exists.
By the way,
I
I believe that gravity exists.
So you believe in gravity then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I know that there's this argument, and we didn't talk about it in the documentary. I think because it was probably going to confuse too many people, which was we said that like 70% believe in a dome and 30% don't believe in a dome, which is 30% you're going to run into problems with the atmosphere vacuum. But as far as gravity versus not gravity, I mean, yes, of course we know there's buoyancy. No question. I mean, you take a helium balloon, you let it go right now, it's going to go to your ceiling.
Yep.
That's buoyancy because you're breathing in a thin version of water. But is there a magical molecular force that pulls things straight down? Yeah, sure. I'll go with Neil Tyson on that one.
That's a controversial statement for someone in your
But
community.
no, because I think you can have both, and here's why. If you are in an airplane cockpit, fighter pilot, for example, which is sealed, and you pull up on that stick, something's pushing you hard into the back of that seat. And you remember, you're in a sealed cockpit. So it's not like a whole bunch of buoyancy is running into you in your face. So what's pushing you back to the back of the seat? It's got to be something. I mean, granted, yes, there's absolutely buoyancy. And now of course, if it is a pressurized enclosed system, buoyancy works great, fantastic. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to have gravity. I mean, gravity, I think I think you can have both. I just think the only difference, I've said this many, many times, which I say that if Neil Tyson says it's a magical molecular force that pulls things down to the center of a ball, I say, fine. Ours, it's a magical molecular force that pulls things straight down. And it's probably artificial on top of it. At that point, it's like
if you're in a created system.
If you're in a creating system, it's probably I suppose you could go off density, but then we don't know how thick it is, and the gravity equation has to be redone. I don't know, but I believe in both. I will not lose sleep either way. Because first off, we absolutely know there's buoyancy, so. Because we know that's there. So if it's just buoyancy and not gravity, it'd be like, fine, you got me on that one. I don't care. But I do believe in gravity. I do. I don't. Okay. But remember, I'm also a big believer of, and I don't know who came up with this, which was, it's not a disc flying upwards through space at 9 meters per second. That myth. Seriously, I'm still trying to find somebody that absolutely believes in that, because
is there anybody in the community that actually believes that, or is it something that because community members are mocked by?
Well, yeah, because you can't believe in that, because at that point you're saying, oh, okay, there's space. Everybody, most of your flat earthers just cringe every time, and the media loves using it because it's a great visual, which is that whole pancake Earth flying through space. It's like, great. And it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, whatever image I give them. Somebody always, no, let's use this one. It's way cooler looking. It's like, we used to actually think it was cool looking back in the day, back in 2015. Maybe that's why. In 2015, that was the images we were throwing around too, to be honest, just because it was the only images we could find. And then quickly it was like, no, we got to get rid of those. So
we grabbed the first thing that looked cool, and then we really didn't think about it until somebody started calling us out on it. Let's modify our visuals.
We were calling ourselves out on it, is what was happening. Yeah. It wasn't the globalists. We were going, okay, there's something we can't. It's actually not in space. We were baby steps. 2015, we didn't know a lot, but we got good pretty quick.
Back to the Cavendish, like I said, I'm setting up a Cavendish. I'm here in South Korea for a year by myself without the family, so I have an apartment to myself and nothing to do. So that's why I created a YouTube channel, because I got bored.
Sure.
But I have wanted to create a Cavendish for a long time, and I wanted to show it to my kids. So I figured, when I get here, I've got a spare bedroom. I was going to start setting it up, and the initial image of what I was going to build was very simple. And 6-7 months later, I'm still not done, because I'm still trying to modify it. I'm still trying to refine it, because every time I put something new into it, I've got to modify it a little bit more to make sure I'm removing all the variables. I want it to be a valid test. Right. And it has grown into a thing of its own. So what you were saying about Jared, you like, don't do it the first time on camera.
Right.
Especially if you haven't thought it through completely.
Oh yeah.
If it's just ad hoc, you're gonna fail.
Yeah. It always sounds, well, with anything, it always sounds good in your head. And then all of a sudden you try to do a practical application. what's that line from the movie Time Travel? Time travel, practical applications. And it's like, what? Yeah, it sounds great, but yeah, we've blown so many experiments here and there just because it's like, okay, it kind of sounds like when guys are like getting really stoned on a couch. It's like, okay, man, here's what we're gonna do. And let the same guys say we're gonna rob a bank. It's like, yeah, man, we're gonna go down there, we're gonna rob a bank. And it's like, and yeah, when they finally realize, like, no, man, it's not gonna work.
What happens when you walk out of that bank? Or what happens when you walk out of that bank, you got away with it, and then 3 weeks later, then what?
Yeah,
You've gotta think this out a
yeah,
little
you
bit more
really
than
gotta
we're gonna rob a bank.
think things through. And again, I appreciated like all the guys that did the Lake Balaton experiment. They freaking flew out to another country to a frozen lake in the off season, stayed in a hotel, nobody was there, froze the egg, like 5 of them got pneumonia, and melted their first laser, just like Jaren did, and had backup lasers apparently because they were getting a lot of donations for different people for lasers. And even the Guinness Book of World Records guy like stayed in the car for until he could get called out. It's like come on, come on. It's like, no, I don't want to come out.
Call
But
me when you're 5 seconds away.
yeah, tell me when you're close. And that was a local. I'll tell you how bad it was. But yeah, I mean, again, I wasn't even the first person to tell people to like go down to the beach, and like the clues said nothing about the curvature, which I just tickled me. All of a sudden, in fact, I had people here to tell you really quick. I was a big fan of the Orlando Ferguson map when I first got into this. You probably saw it looks like a roulette table. It's like from the 1800s. It's kind of in a tan with 4 angels in the corner. It's a striking map. I actually saw the original up in Wyoming,
Spearfish, South Dakota.
South Dakota. South Dakota.
Yeah, I've got a picture of it because I'm originally from South Dakota, and we went up there on vacation last year to Deadwood.
I drove there on my way to. I wasn't going to the biker thing. On my way to Mount Rushmore. Yep. Drove through there, and I thought it was striking back then, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was amazing how quickly people jumped on me. First thing they said was, "Okay, first off, you can't say the roulette table anymore." I go, "I can't say roulette table." I go, "Why?" Because all the numbers add up to 666. It's absolutely true. It's like, okay, that's weird, but fine. I won't say roulette table anymore. And they said, also, there's no curve at all. It's absolutely flat. I go, how do you know? And they said, because everyone's taking photography. They're taking long distance photography. I'm going, what? And so that's when, slowly but surely, the rumor mills and the gossip chains to where now, it's pretty much common for us.
Another question or line of questioning. And again, if sensitive topics, please tell me.
No, that's fine.
No discussion. One thing that, again, on the Globe side of the community, that we would like to pick things apart and make fun of things that we think are ridiculous or funny. From the movie, there was the love-struck view between you and Patricia.
Talk about the power of editing. Okay, yeah, the way they filmed that, there was only one real genuine moment in there. Everything else, it was time travel. They had portrayed it like it was actively happening during that movie, when in truth it had happened a whole year before, in 2016. That's when Patricia and I were kind of dancing around trying to figure out what was going on. And in fact, we did a podcast in 2018 where she came up to the Northwest for a meetup up here. She's been up to the Northwest for meetups different times. And we went across the ferry, and they made that seem like that was the first time we ever met. Again, just using, it's like, well, why not? Let's just shoot it in that order. And so the moment that I gave it away was, and partially was my fault, and that was I had just gotten back from my year in Canada with the flat earth girl that was way too young for me. And I was sort of in a vulnerable spot. So and then it was like, oh yeah, but as soon as right after I'd gotten back, we were already starting to shoot the movie, and I had to go down, and I spent the weekend with Patricia down there with the film team. And when that was the moment that everyone caught, which was we're sitting next to each other, and it's like, oh, it's time to go, and I didn't want to go. I mean, I really enjoyed spending my time with Patricia. We had fantastic conversations, and we've been doing this for a long time. That part was authentic. Did she feel the same way? No, she did not. We seem to be, and we realize this, we seem to be a better team than we were a relationship. Meaning people always said that. It was weird. And that's why we kept doing it. It was like, oh yeah, you got this. And I heard this from producers and other people. It was like, oh yeah, you got this on-screen chemistry thing. I never really knew it because I always considered myself like Shrek. And she was always so camera ready all the time. I watched her go just kind of half-ass it through a film screening thing, like a screen test. And like the camera, he completely botched up the footage. And he goes, and I said, "You gonna reshoot it?" He goes, "Her? No, I'm not gonna reshoot her. Are you kidding? she's perfect. She's always ready for camera." So anyway, yeah, it was the romance. It was in the film was edited. That was how we shot it, or how they edited it out, which was they made it seem like it was way more current than it was. Now, did it actually happen? Sure. Did it happen when they said it happened? No.
Yeah.
But
was there ever an attempted romance?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we were considering it, and I don't want to go into too much of the details. I made some bad choices. I went to a meetup with I won't even call it. Well, I will call it a bad choice. It was a bad move, which was while we were kind of in the stage of kind of figuring things out. I went to a meetup and Orphan Red was there, and if you know who she is, and she had some ideas, and that's when the other girl from Canada, she went to that meetup too, and it turned into kind of a situation where Patricia didn't approve. So even though Patricia, she likes putting up a good game face, it's like, look, Mark's a grown man. He can do whatever he wants, right? Well, translation is like, yeah, you better not. And so yeah, that cost me. That cost me a great deal. And who knows what would have happened if I hadn't gone down the Orphan Red path. So yeah.
Are you still in contact with Patricia?
Oh, you mean after her channel went down?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How's she doing? How's everything going?
Well, everything's fine. You got to remember that she wants. She has a really. I don't know how to explain her in this case. I warned her. There's some people that public perception is very, very important to, and there's a lot of them out there, especially if you're younger. In her case, she read every single comment on every single video that she ever made. And
don't read the comments.
No, you don't. You can't read the comments. I mean, you've got to step back from it, especially if it gets ugly. And it didn't matter how painful it was. She kept because she sanitized her comment sections. It's like if people were doing horrible things, and she'd read it first, it'd be burned in her head. Delete, read, delete, read, delete. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, eventually, sooner or later, you're going to snap if you do this.
That's not healthy.
I guess, especially if you have 300. She's coming up on 300 videos, and and she would not listen. It wasn't like, maybe you're right. Hey, maybe this. Nope. She just kept on trudging through it. And eventually it's, everyone's got their breaking point, which is why I do not read comments for the most part, because it's awful. It's like a viper's den in there. So there was a video it was a combination of things. Eric Dubay, went on one of his tears with that video he made. And her ex-boyfriend didn't help. Antonio has been haunting her.
Antonio.
Yeah, that didn't go well. And then that combined with just the relentless pace of the comments, that she just said, yeah, you know what? I don't need this. She goes, I'm stepping back until I can figure out where, what my place is in this. Because she was a punching bag. She was a triple threat, meaning she's a woman, she's really pretty, which of course that doesn't go well, and she's Jewish. It's like, okay, between those three things, you're and thank God, again, all God's children, I don't care, but if her name wasn't Steer, it was like Silverstein or something like that. Oh yeah, she would just be blistered with people that would coming at her. And so yeah, she buzzed me one day and said, look, I'm turning off, and until otherwise, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well,
I hope she hangs in there. So cross my fingers. You know, I've seen her do this before. It's not completely unexpected, but at the same time, things got amped up. Let's put it this way: the good and the bad got amped up after the Behind the Curve thing. Once the
yeah.
documentary came out, there was a lot of good. I mean, she was being recognized in places, you know, going to Starbucks and the car wash, and it's like, oh, I know you. But at the same time, there were the target on her back got a lot bigger.
Yeah. If you don't mind, give me 1 second.
Sure.
I have to say goodnight to my wife.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, she's stateside.
That's fine. Is she West Coast, East Coast?
Colorado Springs.
Oh, so 11:45, roughly.
Yep. Well, actually, right now she's back in South Dakota with her family, so she's another hour. She just left a couple days ago for a family vacation. Or every summer she takes the kids back to the grandparents.
Got it.
Yeah, it's weird being over here. I get 2 good nights a day. When I'm telling her good night and when she's telling me good night.
Oh no.
Normally, I tell him 2 good mornings a day.
Yeah, Piggy rings me every morning to say good morning, Dad, because for some reason he feels like I've adopted him. So, with the Patricia thing, I just want to say that in our community, we've recognized exactly what you said. She's the punching bag. She has been at the butt of a lot of horrible videos, and our heart goes out to her.
Well, that's appreciated. I mean, honestly, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what her motivation was to get into this in the first place. Because back in 2015, you gotta remember, she doesn't have to do this. I mean, you know, her parents passed away. She inherited quite a bit of money. And if she wanted to, I mean, if she wanted to clean up on YouTube and be completely non-controversial, she could have done makeup over 40, you know, tips and crushed it because, you know, her bone structure is ridiculous. And she'd be like, look, I just did this in 20 minutes, right? And people are going, oh, I must buy these products. And she could have totally done that, and she didn't. So what? And I'm still to this day, you know, I talk to her a lot, and it's just like, why are you doing this? It's like, why are you? It's almost like, why are you helping us? It's like she's a real standout in that regards, and but she puts people off because of her symmetry. And it honestly, swear to God, the screen does not do her justice. And you see her in real life. And I've seen women just like half her age, just like literally. I'll tell you real quick. I was at a drugstore with her, and the girl at the checkout counter couldn't have been 21, right? And she just stops dead in her tracks. She goes, how do you do it? She goes, what's your secret? You know, I mean, because women want to know. It's like, okay, what it is, and of course the other side of that. That's the good side. The other side is, you know, everybody hates the homecoming queen. They hate her. They hate her so much. You know, it's schoolyard stuff, which is, you know, you're not so great. It's like, well, in her case, she is.
What's the root of the mud that Antonio's slinging against her? Where's that?
Oh, it's always the same. It's always the same thing, and that is the male ego is so fragile, which is and I don't know why it keeps happening. The movie Grease, when you know, with John Travolta, which is when
my wife's favorite movie, and I try to avoid watching it as much as I can.
Really? I had to grow up with it because my sister, she was a huge. She owned 3 albums when we were really young. One was Sean Cassidy, one was Andy Gibb, and one was the Grease soundtrack. And she would freaking listen to that thing. I remember that Grease came out, I think, in '79. Anyway, the point was, I keep reminding me because guys, when a girl breaks up with a guy and the guy's ego is damaged, he's a macho guy, right? They'll go one of 3 ways. Well, actually, only one of 2 ways. But the first one is, oh, you know, she's just a bitch, whatever, or she they'll just make something up to soothe their ego, right? And usually it's like, oh, she was a slut, she was this, she was that. And then another set of guys will go take it one step further. They'll say, oh, you kidding, man? She was a lesbian, obviously. It's like I was too much man for her. But Antonio, he
took it. He turned it up to 11.
Yeah, he did turn it up to 11. It's like, oh no. She was a guy. And it's like, what? It's like, what? It's like, okay. First off, that's great sensationalism, sure, but it puts you in a precarious position because, like, didn't she live with you for months? So were you living with and remember, this was back, I know the transgender thing is really hot now, but it wasn't really hot back then, just a few years ago. And so it's like, and he wouldn't let it die. So, okay. So what happens is that the sensationalism feeds kind of this weird positive reinforcement. Again, Grease, tell me more, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people were going, and he was getting hits, he was getting subs, and so what do you think he was going to do? It's like, oh, people want to, I'm going to tell, that's straight out of tabloid tactics. It was like, if the headline works, you just keep using that headline until they sue you. It's like, Jennifer Aniston, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to keep running with that. And he wouldn't stop. And then, of course, it got worse because some of the trolls jumped on it. And by that, I shouldn't even say the globalist trolls didn't jump on it. It was our guys that jumped on it. So like Eric Dubay jumped on it, which was the worst. And then ODD, I think, jumped on it a little bit, and some of these other guys. And it only takes a few. And they just reinforced it. It's like, oh yeah, I know Antonio. He's totally, hashtag legit, hashtag gender question mark.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God. And it just would not. And you got to remember, for someone like her, who is ultra feminine, super feminine, everything she does is feminine. I mean, her house, it's Disney Queen, right? But it's not Snow White, but it's super feminine. That just crushes her. And she just wanted, which is why I've told many people, I go, if this world ever gets weirder, don't ever give her a magic wand. Don't ever do it. Because the body count will be staggering. She remembers anyone that ever burned her in comments. She remembers, she's got a block list a mile long. She will destroy. I mean, seriously, she would burn this world down. I haven't even seen the new X-Men, but I pretty much, she'd make that go to shame. Phoenix who?
Yeah. And for somebody who, like you said, reads every comment.
Yeah.
That's just terrible. That's not taking a little dig at her. That is targeted, terrible human behavior.
Yeah. And everyone, I feel it's politics, which is, we all know that politicians now, they don't run ads pumping up themselves. They run them tearing down the other guy. I don't care. It's like, I'm a great candidate. Nobody cares. It's like, no, my other candidate is my opposition is terrible, and here's why. Right?
I've heard that he murders babies. It may not be true, but he may murder babies.
Exactly. Paid for by the guy that's not murdering babies. It is absolutely, yeah. Well, you can read, like, here's the thing. You could read 10, everyone does it. We gloss over. It's like, you're great, you're wonderful, you're great, you're wonderful. You're a complete dick, psycho, blah, 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 and I hate you. You should die horribly and painfully. And you read this and you go, you absolutely forget everything else. It's like,
yeah,
why does he hate me so much? And then if you're her and it's like, it's like you should die, tranny queen. It's like, whoa, that is. I mean, I honestly, if I can't even imagine what she'd feel. I wouldn't be able to sleep. It'd be awful. So yeah. I'm hopefully she will get some sort of semblance, some sort of normalcy, and she comes back great. But
if she accepts the globe, we will gladly take her to our side.
Thanks.
We've been going almost 2 hours. I've got a couple short questions. Thank you again so much for your time. This has been awesome. No. What about the shirt? I got to ask. I am Mark Sargent. The I am Mark Sargent shirt.
Oh, okay.
What's the history behind that?
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, and I feel bad because if you're not old enough or you haven't watched enough movies, nobody's going to get it. But there were a lot of people that watched movies, and first off, I didn't even come up with it. It was people that were giving me, okay. In the clues, I said, I'm a huge movie buff, and one of my favorite, well, I shouldn't say, my favorite movies of 1999, the greatest year in movies, was Fight Club. And I said, The first rule of Flat Club is you don't talk about Flat Club. That was kind of clever. I was like, and so people went off on that, and somebody came up with, oh, you're kind of like Robert Paulson, which, if you remember the movie, he's the guy that died. Nobody remember the name. The big guy that was played by the lead singer of Meatloaf. And he died, and people was like, who is he? Right? It's like, nobody knows. And it's like, no, his name is Robert Paulson. Right? And it's like, we are all Robert Paul. I am Robert Paulson. We're all Robert Paulson. Therefore, I am Mark Sargent. And it's like,
okay.
Yeah, I know.
That makes sense.
And people thought it was awfully movie clever. And I go, it's fine. And the next thing you know, I'm getting sent T-shirts along these lines, and the production I wore that a couple times in the movie, didn't I?
Yeah.
They asked for it specifically. In fact, the National Geographic guys, and I don't think they even used it. They asked for it too. They said, bring your I Am Mark Sargent shirt. It's like, oh God. And so that won't die for whatever reason. But if you don't know that, you think it's, in fact, I don't even know what you think. I don't know if it's an egotistical thing, or if
I would say that is the general view of it. And talking with you and getting that explanation, totally get it. That's when everybody else should be wearing the shirt because I am Spartacus.
Right. And other people
But when you're the only one, that's not the perception.
Yeah. Well, that was just it. I mean, there were other people. No, there were other people that wore the shirt, but not in front of cameras. So it's like, it was the only thing. It's like, okay, so, but whatever.
I'd say it's kind of along the lines of Jaren's channel, Jarenism. If you don't know the history of the name of that channel, you think he's talking, this channel is about me. This is the Jarenism show. But the origins of it were, he said, or it's like he did weird things, so certain things became, it's a Jarenism. Saying it this way is a Jarenism. Doing it this way is a Jarenism.
See,
that's what I've heard him explain it as. Like, oh yeah, I get that. Good thought process, not realizing where this is going to go.
Right.
Because then it appears egotistical.
I'll tell you. Yeah. In fact, I would have thought of it more from the one of the last, no, not one of the last scenes, but a scene from Ferris Bueller when he was he was wearing the towel of his head. He was talking about isms. He goes, I don't believe in it. He quoted John Lennon. He goes, I don't believe in isms. I believe in myself. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that where I never even did ask Jaren about that. But you're absolutely right. I'll throw one more out at you real quick. I've got a guy doing illustrations for the book, and the first chapter, which is called Look Away, I've got an illustration of a guy in a blindfold. And I said, okay, should we go? I was talking to a couple people, and I said, should we go with a guy with a blindfold or a guy kind of peeking under a blindfold? And all of a sudden, everybody realized it's like, no, because if he's peeking under the blindfold, he's going to be showing one eye. The whole, the one-eyed symbolism thing. It's to be like the ultimate. I mean, in the very first chapter, that's the first thing. People would just jump on that. And so it's like, oh, perception. I realize that perception is so important.
It's hard to get ahead of that, because I mean, when Jaren thought of that, why would I do weird things? That's a Jarenism. But now, there's no way you could have had the forethought to see that that's what would happen, just like with the shirt. It's a cool thought process, a great concept.
Yeah.
When it's framed right.
Right. And again, if you've seen, the other bad thing is that Fight Club's 20 years old now. It's like, oh, great. Yeah, I'm getting old. Yeah. Fight Club. Remember Fight Club? Brad Pitt was in it.
What about the button from the movie? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Did I wear a button?
No, the button for the NASA simulation.
Oh, okay. No, that was the power of editing. In fact, that was very clever, and the director felt bad. He told, when we went up to the Toronto Film Festival in back in April of in 2018, I got to see it before it premiered in the hotel room. It was just Patricia and me, and they left. It's like, oh, you guys watch it and you come back. And the first thing he did when he sat down with me was, he goes, is it okay that I did the button that way? And I said, yeah, it's fine. And what he'd done was, it was just accidental. I swear to God, it was just dumb freaking luck that I sat down. Well, of course I smacked the button. There's only one button in the whole damn thing, right? It's literally just a giant green button. And most people don't know that when you're shooting stuff, especially in a documentary, you let the people leave. And then you zoom in on, just so so you can have a place for your editor to cut stuff. And so you just zoomed in on the center of that frame, which was the button. And the editor came up with this idea, and I still don't know exactly whose idea it was, but I'm sure they didn't want to take the blame for it, which was, all we have to do is take out the part where Mark hit it and then just zoom in on the part where we had zoomed in anyway, and Mark missed the button. And because he missed it, well, then it's symbolism. Well, if he missed that, it was really obvious, and he's obviously missing the globe, which is also really obvious, and so on and so on. So, again, it was fine. It was their movie. I had nothing to do with the editing. It was, I mean...
You got to admit that it was hilarious. It was for entertainment value, it was a good move.
It was a good move, and that's why they did it. It was a good shot, and they didn't have to redo anything. It was simple. It was really, because the shot was, I was obviously there for that whole part, and it was really kind of boring. It was just Patricia was kind of just filming herself, and I'm hitting there smacking the frickin' screen because I thought, no, seriously, I thought, if the green button doesn't work, maybe they have a touch screen override. No, no, that whole place was just worn down and broken. There was no touch screen.
Did the actual start button not work?
No, the start button didn't work. That was the whole point. And they left all that out too, which was nothing in that place worked. It was like an amusement park ride from the late 80s, early 90s that nobody had upkept. Everything was super worn. There were like things were just turned off because they weren't working. And we were just kind of walking around, just taking shots at people, taking shots at exhibits. And they cut most of that out. And then it's like, okay, the button thing. But it was good, like you said. The things they kept in, they remember they shot for 7 months, and they had to whittle it down to 100 minutes. And like, for example, little things like Chris Pontius, who was left completely unscathed, the model maker. They had hours of his footage, and they loved that more than anything. They said they would have loved to have made a movie just of him building models, because they said it was just hypnotizing when they were watching it. Just they just sit around the editing room, just sitting there going, eating, and it was fantastic, apparently. So,
another question. Logan Paul at the convention. Heard a lot of rumors of that you were not happy with his presence there and left because of it.
First off, Logan Paul, and I said this in the book. In fact, he's part of Enemies of the State, and I only knew about Logan Paul's existence through his brother Jake. Because I do a lot of internet research, and I've gone through so many things. I accidentally ran into Jake. It's like, okay, who's this idiot? Didn't know that he had an older brother. Then I ran into his older brother, and then I happened to stumble across the Japanese suicide video thing when he went out there, and then I had to go back into his history, and what happened was I've lost friends to that years ago, and so I have a strong opinion on it, and so. It was like the perfect storm of bad things that happened here. Meaning, he decided to come to the conference, but he didn't tell the promoter. He didn't tell Robbie, and so he just bought tickets. Robbie saw him on the list and recognized him, and Logan convinced him to keep it a secret. That's where things went wrong. Keep it a secret from everybody, including me, including the speakers, and Robbie didn't even announce it to us until 12 hours before this thing was going live. Well, I'd already been to the freaking, I was already in Denver for 2 days at that point. And we were at the cocktail hour, and whoever it was who was flying in decided they weren't going to show up at the dinner, and then they weren't going to show up to the cocktail, the VIP cocktail thing. And then, so Robbie just says, before all going to bed, oh yeah, by the way, it's Logan Paul. And he told David Weiss, and David Weiss told me. And David was looking at me, because we had been speculating for so long on who it was, and Robbie just let us run with the hype. We were taking guesses like way out there, like Will Smith and guys that were just way above that would have been there. And the next thing you know, I was in complete denial. I was like, no, it can't be Logan Paul. It cannot be Logan Paul, because no one would make that sort of choice. Logan Paul can't be here. He's a professional troll. Literally, that's all he does. He's made hundreds of troll videos. In fact, he trolled everybody in the United States to where he was going to other countries and trolling them. He'd already done Europe. That's why he was over in Japan. He was running out of people to troll. And I was trying to, I was sitting down at the dinner table that night with, I think, half the speakers. And I'm trying to tell him, I'm going off on a rant for an hour. Just going, look, this guy cannot be here. He is going to freaking burn us. He's a pariah on the internet. Seriously, I don't believe in infanticide. But if I had to go back in time, I'd smother him with a pillowcase. Getting worked up. So no one would listen to me because they just didn't know who he was. So what was I supposed to do? And so but I didn't know for sure. I was still in denial. It's like, well, it can't be him. I think even that point I was going, it cannot be him. So I said, if I come in tomorrow morning and I go to the registration thing and somebody tells me that, oh yeah, Logan Paul and his team of boy band rejects are there, that I'm going to walk. I'm just going to go to the airport. And that's exactly what happened. And it was my protest to everybody. It's like, but it was more insurance on top of that, which was he can't be allowed to punk the entire conference. Now, what I didn't know was until he released that in his behind the scenes documentary, and it was tickled me when he mentioned that, was that I went home. I mean, I literally got on a plane. I was on a plane in 2 hours later, and I was back in Seattle, and I did a podcast with somebody that night, and I was telling them, in fact, it was Zulu and some of the other guys. I was going over all this, and Logan was listening. That I didn't know. He had listened to the podcast because it was on there, and he had heard the rumor that I had left, and maybe Robbie told him. And at that point, he thought there may be enough dissension that he may not be, that people may be kind of targeting him at the hotel. So that's when he changed hotels. Well, again, flattering. Nobody would have probably done anything, although you never know. But yeah, but the bad part for me was I had to catch flack for 3 months until he finally released his piece. And it wasn't just vindication. In fact, I didn't even have to do I told you so dance or anything like that. It was horrible. It was the way he gave it away in the first 7 minutes where, his friend said that he had lost somebody off the edge of the yeah, it was horrible. But it really hurt. It hurt everybody's feelings when he got to the end and when they were saying, oh no, I don't believe in flat Earth. It's the stupidest, expletive thing I've ever heard. And then it made it even worse. He doubled down and did the behind the scenes thing, and that was horrible. That was even worse because he was calling out Robbie and it's like he wasted a great opportunity. He could have done something relatively tasteful or something better production. And remember, he didn't even do the final edit on that piece. He outsourced the editing because I think he didn't even know how to edit it himself because the topic was so far above his head, and he was anyway. So that was basically it. And so yeah, for 3 months I caught hell. And then afterwards, I was redeemed. It was like, oh yeah, Mark called it. Then I which is fine, but I try to tell people. Let me end on this, which is, if there was ever a better example of the frog and the scorpion story, this is it right here. Which is like, it's like, look, he's done nothing but troll videos, and you think he's going to do a serious piece. You think he's going to do and he's not. He's absolutely conning you. So, but a lot of people, the reason why they bought it, there was two parts. One was he had at the time, 6 million, 8 million subs, something like that. That goes a long way in terms of, I guess, credibility, even though you can buy subs. But the other thing is that everybody on his team that he brought was in on it. Meaning, not only does his friend Mike, I think it's Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
Even though his friend Mike said he was already into it, and then even the assistant, that's the part where you're playing dirty. The assistant who's setting up all the travel stuff and saying the hotel, she's totally playing it too. She's saying, oh yeah, Mike's totally into it, and Logan, he's curious and all this, and at that point, why wouldn't you believe? There was no tongue in cheek. They were all super nervous, like, oh, we're gonna punk him. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah, honestly, all it would have taken was about 20 minutes of going through Logan Paul's back history of videos.
Yeah.
You would have had your answer.
But if you want silver lining on this, one, he generated a huge amount of metrics because
he did
a massive amount, and it was kind of flattering in a way, in that he currently he's in a rough part. You know, he's not on a media blacklist, but he was in a bad place from the
Yeah.
media standpoint. There's some things you don't do, and he was in that, and he was using Flat Earth to jumpstart his status, his social media status. And same thing, you know who did the same thing was Neil Tyson. Remember he had to go through that whole Me Too thing earlier in the
Yeah.
year,
Yep.
and he came out of it, and they settled out of court. And what was the first thing Neil did to get back into it? He started tweeting against Flat Earth. That right out of the gate, literally day
Yeah.
one. He was like, I was like, oh yeah, Neil settles out of court. Very next day, tweet, Flat Earth. It's like right on. Cool. And again, the Newsweek headline, not an accident. They're coming after us now. So,
couple of final questions as I wrap up, and I've got some other questions. I've had some friends that knew that I was going to talk to you, so I've got some off questions, and I'm going to keep it polite and cordial because I'll be honest, a lot of the questions are not necessarily that way, so I'm not going to go there because I want a good dialogue here. Who do you think is the greatest contributor in your community and the greatest detriment in your community? Because I know on our side, there are people that they're damaging. They're entertaining, but they're damaging.
yeah.
So from your side, who do you think has the greatest effect bringing people to your side, and who has the greatest effect pushing people from your side?
Okay, modesty aside, because I am the freshman recruiter, chances are if you're just getting into the community, you're going to run into my stuff first.
Yeah.
I've just heard it again and again and again. It doesn't matter who you went to. In fact, I hear this over and over, which is I looked at other people's stuff first, but it seemed too difficult. So I looked at your stuff. I got it. Again, 101 book. There's a reason why we have 101 books before 201, before 301. You got to start. You give somebody a 301 book, they're what are you going to do? I mean, yes, some people might be able to get through it, but a lot won't. So yeah, as far as the easiest people, the person that probably brought the most into it, yeah, I'll say me. Sure. Why not?
Okay.
It kind of reminds me of the movie, movie reference, Blow with Johnny Depp, where he was doing the cocaine runs from South America.
Yep.
There was that line where he goes, "If you did coke in the 1980s, there was like from this year, there was an 80-something% chance that you got it from me." And I was like, yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, I've heard it too many times. But that being said, I mean, again, I get you in the door, and a lot of people, I won't say they abandon me, but they kind of do. They put down the 101 book, and it's like, oh yeah, and then they run off, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember Mark. Yeah, but the other people they stick with a lot longer, which is fine. The guy that does the most detriment, without question, which is again, blessing and a curse, Eric DeBay.
Yeah.
He has freaking, oh my gosh, that man burned bridges. He's done so many, I mean, there's so many people that have said that they love his stuff, and he's made a lot of content for Flat Earth, no question. But he has, between the anti-Semitic stuff, which again, it's 2019, can't really do that anymore. I mean, seriously, I'll give you a perfect example. Every producer that has asked me about Eric, and I'm not shy about saying this, people have said, they ask me about Eric all the time. They ask about Matt, and I say, at your own peril, and you saw what happened in the documentary there.
Yeah.
Seriously, and they kept calling. They called him even when I tell every producer the same thing. I go, don't call Matt. You will not be able to hold a conversation with him. They're going, piece of cake. And then they call me back and they go, why didn't you tell me? I go, I did tell you. You're just not listening. But with Eric, between the anti-Semitic stuff and the burning of the bridges. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. The reason why Eric was not even mentioned in the documentary is because when I say anti-Semitic, if I even use the words, every producer, it doesn't even matter if they're a Jewish producer or not, because there's so many Jewish people in the producer world, they know full well you will not be able to make it through the food chain without that. He once killed one of the early Netflix, not a deal, but a conversation where this was way before the documentary. This was Netflix was thinking about a television show. And they had an intern off to the side with a laptop, type. They cross-referenced Eric with anti-Semitism, gone. That was it. The meeting was over. It was like, I until this guy is pushed out. The other part was he burns bridges, which is if you want to look at any one incident that just catalyzed everybody on our side of the fence and Eric on his own, was when he did the Eddie Bravo interview, where Eddie Bravo, he interviews him through Skype. And I called it. I predicted it. I said, if they run long, if they go over 90 minutes, I didn't think that Eddie would, but he did. If he goes over 90 minutes, Eric's going to get comfortable, and he's just going to start throwing rocks. And he did. Almost like the 100-minute mark, Eric starts going, oh, yeah, by the way, the Raleigh conference, it's just a shill fest. No one should ever go there. And then he also said, and then Eddie asked him some pointed question. He goes, hey, who do you condemn? And Eric was too scared. He wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't condemn anybody on Eddie's show. And he goes, okay, fine. Who do you endorse? And Eric still didn't say anything. It's like, okay, so you're too scared to condemn anybody and too scared to actually endorse any channels. Yeah, Eric has caused, the Patricia thing, for example. He just, and he's in freaking Thailand, and he's never coming back. I have it on pretty good authority that he's absolutely scared to death to come to the States because he thinks he's on a no-fly list. Which
Really?
Yeah, which would be kind of that would, if you were afraid of that, yeah, because if you get to the States and you're on a no-fly list, how are you getting back to Thailand? Now, yeah, you could probably maybe go up to Vancouver or, go up to Canada or down to Mexico. That's not a guarantee. Probably Mexico, you could probably get out. I don't know, but I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, Eric, there you go.
Okay. My last two questions, and then I'll kind of go to a couple of questions here.
Okay.
If you could tell one person the strongest proof that you think would convince the most people, what would it be?
Long distance photography, without a question. It's the easiest to understand. I didn't come up with it. It's not in the clues. People just naturally did it on their own, and it caught on. For whatever reason, I didn't even know what the curvature of the Earth was. Honest, and most people don't. And that's the one. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and video is worth even more. Does it absolutely positively prove a flat Earth? No, it doesn't. But it puts so many seeds in a person's head and it's easy to explain to the average person. Well, it's look, I go out to the beach, I shoot this thing long distance, shouldn't be there, and it doesn't matter if the experiment's done right or if they're if the height, if the viewer height is screwed up or whatever it is. It's in their head, and their first attempt usually produces some sort of results, and that's the one that resonates more than anybody. It's the first one. Yes, I know. And for everyone to show me of that, I could show you. We go back and forth on this. That's the problem, which is.
And the reason I send you this one is because this is a picture I took last week when I was in Hawaii.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, so this is one that I took. I'm going to put it into a video because in front of this building is 180 feet tall.
Right.
It's about 18 miles away.
Right.
And between me so it's like ocean, and then the landmass comes back to the tip of part of the island. And where the landmass starts, between me and this building is 2-story buildings, a flight line, and giant oil tankers.
Sure.
But I can't see them in the image.
Right. You want me to respond?
Yes.
You've heard all these though. Yeah. You've heard all these. The one I'll come back with this one, which is something that hopefully my channel's still up on Monday. I'm dealing with some copyright stuff. But I've got a backup channel in the works, and not that it matters anyway at this point. I honestly, my channel gets lost in just the sea of. I mean, you type in flat Earth, you've seen what comes up for the first 50. It's ridiculous. The one I refer to more is it was a little husband-wife team that went down to a frozen lake. It's called 7.53 Frozen. I think it's the Frozen Flat Earth test, where she goes down. It was either early in the morning or late at night. I can't remember. I think it was early in the morning. She goes down on one end of the lake, 7.53 miles away. She sets the flashlight literally down on the ice. He's on the other side. He sets his camera on the ice. Of course, he doesn't put it on the ice. He puts it on a little tripod. It must be maybe 1.5 feet up. And, they're on cell phones and it's live. And she's clicking it off and on and he can see it clearly. And so it's like, okay. But I know there's going to be the problem we have is, again, part of, I think, the design of this place is that the soup that we're breathing in, that we're looking, at each other in, just it changes with atmospheric conditions and light and distance. And I mean, heck, the Skunk Bay footage, which wasn't even ours, is a great example of that. Which is, it's just a guy shooting a peninsula from a distance, and time lapse, and all of a sudden the houses are
Goes up
gone,
and
it
down.
goes up, and so we have a hard time on both sides trying to come to a conclusion, because you can't tell on any one given day, because every day is freaking different.
Mhm.
It's kind of like shooting stuff in a river. Every day every day's a river's different if you're trying to do experiments in a moving
Yeah.
river. So, on some days, yeah, we have the advantage. On other days, you guys have the advantage. Although if one more person sends me that freaking what was that bridge down in Florida?
Talking Lake Pontchartrain and
That's it, Lake Pontchartrain.
yeah.
If I have one more person send me that damn thing, it's like, oh my God, that's as bad as, okay, let me throw one more at you real quick, which is the Red Bull jump, which I had the guy in Australia, the scientist, full blown PhD, says, oh yeah, the Red Bull jump, that showed the curve. I'm going, dude, don't you even give me that. I would go, full well that if it was that curved. In fact, I asked other people, I asked guys in media, I said, and they knew full well, and they go, yeah, but it's a good shot. And I go, yeah, it's a good shot, but isn't it a little false advertising? And they go, yeah, but it's more dramatic. And go, it makes him look like, he's wearing the whole astronaut suity type thing. It's like, it makes him look like, he's in space. I was going, but he's not in space. But he's not. They go, yeah, but it's a good shot. I was going, oh, you're killing me. You're just killing me. I go, yes, I understand it's a good shot, but it doesn't mean, and then, again, it's like, should they use it or should they not use it? And it's like, that's the shot they all used because it was a better shot. It's like, okay, fine. Anyway, sorry, what else you got?
Yep. Then what would you say is the one thing? Well, not necessarily the worst proof, but what's the one thing that's made you question it for the globe side?
Oh, it's got to be the same for everybody. It's the Antarctic sun. In fact, I'm really surprised the globalists don't just hammer that at us all the time. The Antarctic sun is the most problematic, because it has to be another light source. If it's a flat Earth model, you can't have 24 hours of sun in Antarctica. It can't be done, unless you have a second light source, or unless there's something else going on out there that we don't know about. Of course, it helps that Antarctica is for the most part off limits, and also screams go away, so there's hardly anyone there. But I've talked to people that have said, oh yeah, I was there for the Antarctic sun. I talked to a camera guy that worked for Nat Geo. Even though he was really curious about flat Earth, he's going, what about the Antarctic sun? I go, I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's something going on with it, and with the optics, and who knows? Maybe it's one of those things where you can get away with two suns, or overlapping. I don't know. Part of the display system, we don't know. Again, we've only been doing this 4 years, but that is by far, in my opinion, has always been the weakest one, because logistically, even for somebody who boils it down like I do, logistically, it should be easy enough for someone to say, oh yeah, I mean, yeah, for the North Pole, yeah, it works great. Fantastic. But for the South Pole, it can't. And so, yeah, that's gotta be the weakest. But it's not enough. It's not enough to turn people.
All right, couple questions. Some of these are a bit snarky, some not so much.
That's fine.
Somebody wanted me to ask you, where do flies go when it rains? I don't know why they want to ask.
That's a great question. Well, like, where do any insects go? They usually go to ground more than anything. Even birds don't fly in the rain. I think all nature goes. That's not a bad question.
I didn't know the history of it, so I didn't know if there was some kind of snark behind it.
No. It's a good question, but I think it's the same thing with, it's not just flies, it's everything. Everything leaves. All nature leaves when it rains.
Not many things like it outside when it rains.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of dragonflies hanging out in a storm.
Yeah. I've got somebody else saying that a body language expert has analyzed the documentary.
Yes.
Do you know where this is going? Okay.
I have not watched it. It's funny because I had actually watched some of her other stuff. I'm not that much of a masochist. I'll watch some stuff. So why? What did she say?
I'm not sure. It was just somebody wanted me to ask.
No, I have not watched it. I am sure that she accuses her big thing in her videos is she accuses everybody of lying. That's her thing. Doesn't matter who it is. And so if she accused me of lying, hey, great, fantastic. But it was a documentary, so and we only did one take. You know, there were no repeat takes, as opposed to like National Geographic, where we did 5, 6, 8 takes for different things. But whatever, I haven't watched it.
Since I'm having technical issues and I'm on my phone that's got 20% battery life, I think that's probably a good time to end it.
Okay.
And we've been on for like 2.5 hours now, so I've taken up plenty of your time.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything I can do to help. Look, this is what I do every day. So
yeah, and you were the beginning of my journey because one of the podcasts I listened to is Oh No, Ross and Carrie, and like 2 years ago, and I'd listened to them for a long time. And you were on like 2-3 years ago, and as I'm listening to that, I couldn't wrap my mind around how people could not accept the globe. So, unlike yourself, who went into the flat Earth, I've stuck with it and I've maintained my globe views.
Right.
But I have been inundated with it ever since. It's one of those things I just can't let go. Yeah. And like I said, I got here to Korea 7 months ago and decided I've got the extra time. Maybe I can put out some of my own content. So you were the beginning of my journey into the flat Earth as well.
Oh, well, cool. I'm hopefully I didn't ruin any part of your life. Real quick, I know before your camera runs out, Ross and Carrie were they were the ones responsible for the whole National Geographic thing even happening.
Yeah.
Is because they wanted to do a test out the Salton Sea, and I said no, I don't want to do a stupid test. I go, the Salton Sea's a horrible place, and the National Geographic was asking me, it's like, hey, how about the Salton Sea? I go, no, ask some of the Los Angeles people. The chapters out there, they're fine. And they kept calling me. They said, no, we'll fly, we'll pay for everything. You'll stay with us at the hotel. You know, come on. I was going, oh, I'm gonna regret this already. And that's and sure enough, Ross was there when we did that. Carrie wasn't, and I kind of wanted to meet her. But yeah, the two of them, when we did that little podcast, it was weird because I didn't know what I was getting. I never do when I do these, but they were hitting me as hard as they could. So
yeah, and the interview at the end of it, because they did like a 4 or 5 part series on flat Earth, and it ended with the interview of you after they had already discussed it. And that was kind of the goal that I wanted here today, was because that conversation you guys had at the end was very polite, very cordial, non-confrontational, just get to know each other. So, yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully I did that. I mean, I've done enough of these that I can't, even if you came at me with knives, I couldn't even, people say, why don't you get upset at the people that really attack you? I go, because it'd be hypocritical. I got to remember that I was on that other side. I was the one that was going, this is the stupidest thing ever. I mean, I was the one that tried to debunk it for 9 months. And so for me to yell and, push back and really get angry, it's not fair. I've practiced what you preach. And so, yeah, no, thank you for this. It was very cordial.
Thank you Thank you again for your time. When I put this together and put it online, I'll send a link to you. No fancy editing or anything like that. That's not what I wanted to do here. This is just conversational. That's what my goal was. So I'll definitely send you a link. Feel free to poke your head in and say hi to the people in the comments.
Okay.
I would be flattered by that. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, very welcome. Hey, you have a good afternoon, and I'll have a good evening.